Welcome everyone to the Racist War on Everything. We are on episode 222. That's quite ominous in some way, I'm sure. Thank you for joining us. This is Fenian, and I've got Nolsey here.
Hello.
Hello, Nolsey, and we're sorry we're a few days delayed. One of those things is just where it's like, Nolsey couldn't do it, and then I couldn't do it, and Nolsey couldn't do it again, and we're just one of those things. But anyway, we're here. I do wish we could have done this one on time, because last week was actually a very big news week. There was an absolute shitload to talk about, and but still, we'll make sure we fit all of that in today. And we're going to kick it off with a discussion on Julian Assange. So, of course, unless you've been living under a rock, you'll know that he flew back into Canberra a few days ago. Last I heard, he made an escape over to a New South Wales beach house. I guess he wants to get some R&R, which is not surprising given the ordeal that he has been through. I might remind people that it wasn't just 5 years he spent in a British prison. He also spent about 7 years under asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. And prior to that, he spent around a year in home detention. So it's actually around 13 years if you include all of those three stints put together. It's about 13 years that he has been incarcerated in some form.
Yep.
The home detention one wouldn't have been so bad, though, because he was actually in a mansion. But still, you're not allowed to leave, So even a mansion, I think, would get pretty damn boring after a while. And I mean, being the publisher of WikiLeaks is kind of a job that does demand travel. So, yeah. But look, Nolsey, what do you think? I'll ask, the question that many people do about Assange, which is he a hero or a villain or a victim or what? What do you think?
I don't know. He's just like this, morally ambiguous actual journalist. In my opinion, for starters, people say oh my god, endangered a whole bunch of U.S. and state intelligence agents. If you're a state intelligence agent, it's the risk of your job. You're gonna get made, or you could get made, and when you get made, you're gonna get fucked up. So I don't really fucking buy that kind of stuff, because there's an accepted risk. But no. Outside of that, no. I mean, he's neither good nor bad. He's a straight neutral fucking actual journalist. There we go.
Right. I mean, it was funny. At the beginning, he didn't want to call himself a journalist. In fact, he said he wanted to wage a war on modern day journalism. Then, of course, for legal reasons, he had to start calling himself a journalist, because WikiLeaks are not actually supposed to be the source of leaking. They're the publisher, and this is the legal workaround. If you illegally leak material, but then a journalist gets a hold of that material and publishes it, the person who leaked it, yes, has committed a crime, like Bradley Manning, or Chelsea Manning now, isn't it? However, the actual journalist or the publisher has not committed a crime. And, there's a long history of journalism, dating back decades where, that type of reporting has been done. And, the point where WikiLeaks or Assange would be crossing the line would be if they did any of the form of the leaking themselves, which I don't think they have, but also if they were to encourage someone to do the leaking. Now, that was basically the case that the Department of Justice in America made against Assange. They had copies of chat logs where he was talking to then Bradley Manning, where it all depends on how you interpret the messages. But, many would argue that it looked like he was basically encouraging Manning to go in and get as many files as he possibly could and then leak them to WikiLeaks. Now, I'm not sure if that's actually the basis of the conviction that he's now got. So, of course, the reason why he's back home is that he did a plea deal where if he pleaded guilty to just one espionage charge, he would simply be sentenced to the 5 years in prison that he has already served in Britain. So
Yeah.
that's why he was able to get out of there quickly. He went over to Saipan Court, which is still under jurisdiction of the United States, because that was the closest US court there is to Australia. So they really try to speed up his return to Australia.
Also, I imagine there'll be some pretty intense complications about having his trial on the US mainland.
Are you talking about like precedents here, or what are you getting at?
No, like fucking bullshit and chicanery. Having it in like a fucking, a know nothing, no name island, basically only announcing it as the trial is going on, and etc. It basically stopped. I imagine would have stopped some kind of either protest, riot, and or like maybe even an assassination attempt.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing was this is an island like most people haven't even heard of, with a very small population, and they're certainly not used to a big media ruckus or some high-profile former fugitive flying in. So, yeah, that could well have been the other aspect of it as well. Yeah, and there he was, like flanked by Kevin Rudd, who of course is our US ambassador, who had been providing consular assistance to Julian Assange.
Autistic grey-haired man gives consular advice to autistic grey-haired man.
Yeah. And look, it's worth pointing out here that while, leaders like Kevin Rudd, Anthony Albanese, many members of the coalition, including like Barnaby Joyce, I think was probably the biggest cheerleader for the freedom of Julian Assange, they still stopped short of calling him a hero, and they definitely don't condone the leaking or the publishing of leaks that he and WikiLeaks are involved in. In fact, Penny Wong, our foreign minister, said, "We welcome him home, but please no more leaking." Now, I don't know how likely it is that he's going to get back into that vocation. Like I said, 13 some years in incarceration is obviously going to take a toll. We were repeatedly told about how it took a toll on his mental and physical health. So, after those 13 years, he might just be spent mentally and, may not actually get back into it.
I don't think anyone would blame him for completely stepping away from all this shit at this point. I don't think anyone would. He had his balls thoroughly paddled.
Right. And look, also worth pointing out that, while, say some people on the right might call him a hero and some people on the left might also call him a hero, I think the left is probably the more likely to be saying that. There are still definitely very heavy critics on both sides. Initially, it was just bipartisan. Everyone was, when you had, I think it was called Cablegate, and that's when the information dump from the Manning files was released. And then you had also that video called Collateral Murder, where they were just gunning down civilians in Iraq. That included 2 Reuters journalists as well. And you had figures like John Bolton saying that both he and Bradley Manning should be put to death for treason, even though Assange is not a US citizen. But also, more recently, I subscribe to The Australian, so I've seen several articles in there going on about how, he put lives at risk, specifically to do with military operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. That was still, of course, going on at the time. So the first dump was 2010, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
when we had
sometime around there.
Yeah, and then at the end of 2010 was, I think, when you started to have the law catch up with him, which initially was him stealthing. I don't know if you remember that, the women who accused him in Sweden. One of them actually accused him of stealthing, which is where you trick someone into having sex without a condom. I've always questioned that practice, how it is you do it, and also how do you realize later, if you didn't know about it at the time. How did you figure it out later? Is my other question. But
Well,
look,
there's
leaving
one
that
way.
aside, it is interesting to point out. I heard I forget her name, but Julian Assange's main lawyer, she's this blonde woman who's Australian. She did point out that when it came to the charges that were laid against him, I think this was back in 2017, under the Trump administration, I might add, when I know I'm going on so many tangents here, but when he was in under asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy, remember, this was because he did not want to be extradited to Sweden. Because he said, if I get extradited to Sweden and I get charged with, or I face the charges of sexual assault or whatever, I'm going to be then extradited to America for espionage charges where I could actually face the death penalty. Well, the thing is, no charges were actually laid under the Obama administration for espionage. That didn't actually come till 2017 under the Trump administration, where the DOJ did lay those charges. And then it was in 2019 where his asylum was revoked by the Ecuadorian government, so therefore kicked out of the embassy, and then he was arrested on espionage charges. So this again is where I'm like, I'm just so I don't know what my position should be on Assange. It's like, okay, sure, the Americans probably did want to extradite him, but did these women have the right to, have their day in court and, see him actually face those charges in Sweden? I'm not sure. I mean, I'm always still skeptical of whether or not women like that are telling the truth, I got to say as well.
Oh no, that fucking Swedish thing. I'm pretty sure it was what was it, Thor or something like that. Basically admitted that like, oh yeah, he was like approached by like the fucking CIA to basically say like, hey, look, we're doing this. You need to fucking like throw him under the bus and get him out in the public for us so we can nab him on this shit. I'm pretty sure that was like just verified as complete bullshit.
Well, so there were some women who said that, right? But they never actually made formal complaints to the police. No. So one of the women who did make a complaint to the police was Anna Arden. So she is 45 years old now, I believe. She says, there was an article actually I saw lately where she said that she stands by everything, all the accusations she made against Assange, but she forgives him. And she's like, glad he's home now because, he spent long enough in jail. But she still has not retracted anything that she said previously. And she completely denies, being approached by the CIA or anyone to throw Assange under the bus. So I don't know. Anyway, what I was talking about before was the left and the right and the reasons why they might dislike Assange. Well, I was watching Sky News just on the YouTube channel, and one of the diatribes I saw against Assange was by, what's her name? Shari Markson, who, of course, is a Jewish, probably the most prominent Jewish journalist at Sky News at the moment. She said all the usual stuff, like, he put troops' lives in danger. Ah, yes, this is where I was going before I went off on that tangent about Sweden. Julian Assange's lawyer pointed out that the charges in 2017, and then also what was said during his court hearing in Saipan, did not list a single example of a troop or otherwise in Iraq or Afghanistan or anyone else that was actually put at risk as a result of information dumped by WikiLeaks. They weren't actually able to come up with a single example the entire time. And they certainly weren't able to come up with an example of, say, a casualty or someone who died as a result of, say, the enemy obtaining secret information, acting on it, and then being able to, kill a whole bunch of troops. There was not a single example ever presented.
Intelligentsia is not really a part of asymmetrical warfare, because if you're on the small side of asymmetrical warfare, You know where the enemy is. The enemy is fucking everywhere. The enemy is in uniforms. The enemy is building fucking infrastructure that puts a gigantic fucking target on themselves. You don't really need to know, like, oh god, they're looking at moving this much people to here and blah blah blah. You don't really need to know that.
No, and I mean the leaking of something like that collateral murder video I was talking about, that's something leaked like well after the fact, well after when it happened. And I mean, what ultimately is the result of it in terms of the operations or the government? Well, it's an embarrassment for them. That's all. Because it's
Yeah.
showing the public that they were deliberately targeting civilians. And in that video, by the way, they laugh about it at the end. Because like one of the tanks rolls over a dead body and one of the troops laughs at it. So it was an embarrassment. And basically, they were angry that embarrassing material about them and their operations got out. And yeah, they weren't ever show that this endangered lives, not a single time.
I still think it's funny that they're asking Assange to destroy like the original copies of leaked US military intelligence, because it just shows how arse mad they are about it. Like, yeah, like do you think that doesn't have like a million different fucking like backups and copies, and it's been pasted all over the fucking internet? Of course it fucking has.
Right. Just have a look at the link I sent you, Nolsey, in the chat there. I think this is the other reason why many on the right don't like Julian Assange, including Shari Markson.
Ooh, there we go. Didn't know about this.
Yeah, so look, I'm just looking at an article, published in the Forward, whose tagline is Jewish Independent Nonprofit. So this is an article from 2019. So this is probably around the time. Oh yeah, of course it is. It's just when he was kicked out of the Ecuadorian embassy. So what do they have to say about him? They reckon he's a Jewish conspiracy theorist. So the article is titled "Julian Assange's Long History of Alleged Anti-Semitism." Okay, so they go into the points here as to why they believe he's an anti-Semite. First of all, they say that WikiLeaks employed an alleged anti-Semitic Holocaust denier. Okay, do you want to know the name of this alleged anti-Semitic Holocaust denier? His name is Israel Shamir.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
So, Assange denied that Shamir was on the payroll, but then it turned out there was some leaks about WikiLeaks. The payroll documents got out, and yes, he was actually there. Now, Israel Shamir has been referred to before, as you can imagine, as like a self-hating Jew. But as far as I can see, he never said that the Holocaust didn't happen. Anyway, second point. This is to do with so the British journalist Ian Hislop, he did an interview with Julian Assange back in 2011, and this was around at the time that a lot of high-end newspapers in Britain, like The Guardian, were working with WikiLeaks to publish redacted versions of the leaks that they were receiving. Now, during that time, there were said to be a lot of friction between those publications like The Guardian and Julian Assange on just what they could publish. And as you can imagine, Assange wanted kind of more published than The Guardian was willing to do. So it's alleged that during this interview with Ian Hislop, Julian Assange brought up the names of several journalists who worked at these publications and pointed out that they were Jewish, and said that there was a kind of Jewish conspiracy against him.
There was, but you don't have to say it like that.
There was. I definitely agree. Important to point out here, though, that, and this article admits this, that Ian Hislop did not record the interview, nor did he even take notes. And Assange says, no, he never claimed that there was a Jewish conspiracy against him. So, take from that what you will. Okay, the next point. Suspicious tweets. Now, this was back in July 2016. I do remember this when this was happening. The WikiLeaks Twitter account was putting out tweets that had the triple brackets around them. The echo when you say a Jewish name, right? So there were, a few of these put out. Now, look, these were taken down. I remember. I forget exactly what they were referring to. But yeah, I don't know if Julian Assange had actually anything to do with those tweets and the triple brackets. So again, this is pretty ambiguous. Okay, the next one. This may shed some light on whether or not Julian Assange had anything to do with those tweets. So these were messages that were leaked from WikiLeaks. So again, another leak against WikiLeaks. And this is where it showed Assange bringing up the Jewish heritage of a journalist who was critical of him. So this is the reporter Raphael Satter. And Assange wrote in 2016, quote, "He's always been a rat, but he's Jewish, engaged with the triple brackets issue." So there you go. Now, I don't know exactly what he meant by he was engaged with the triple brackets issue, but Assange was certainly
by this.
Yeah, I don't know. Now this last point, this is really stupid. He compared himself to Nazi victims. So to read from the forward article, he said, the WikiLeaks website online shop in 2016 sold a T-shirt with the words, "First they came for Assange," an allusion to the famous Martin Niemöller poem about the Nazi Party's rise to power. I don't see how on earth that makes him an anti-Semite. First they came for the Unionists, then they came for the blah, 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 and then they came for me and there was no one left to speak out against me, is how it goes. I've seen trade unions on T-shirts use that poem about themselves. So, this is like when they accuse people of being anti-Semites because, like, anti-vaxxers will show syringes in the shape of a swastika or something, when what they're actually trying to do is speak out against a form of medical fascism. And by doing that, you're saying fascism is bad. Just like you would be doing here with a T-shirt like that. You're trying to say that, Nazism is bad and we are experiencing a type of Nazism and we're victims of it. So I don't see at all how that would make you an anti-Semite. So that's just ridiculous. Nonetheless, still elements on the right and certainly in Jewish spheres take this to be a sign of anti-Semitism. So they don't like Julian Assange for it. Now, on the left, on the other hand, 2010, of course, Julia Gillard was our prime minister. She strongly condemned it, just as strongly as any other world leader at the time. But I was also watching Tom Hartman, who is a progressive radio commentator, mainly in America. He's quite popular. And he really, really does not like Julian Assange either. And the reason for that is because he blames him for Donald Trump winning in 2016. And remember this criticism that was around? Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have forgotten about this, but remember, many of the emails that Hillary Clinton is accused of deleting were actually released by WikiLeaks during 2015 or 2016. Also, WikiLeaks was said to have had meetings with Donald Trump Jr. And remember when Trump made that speech where he said, hey, WikiLeaks, if you're listening, find those emails and release them? A lot of people say, well, WikiLeaks did exactly that. They listened to him and they said, okay, we've got them, here they are. And then they say that they also, got together with Russian entities as well in order to get hold of those emails and then release them. And yeah, a lot of people say that if WikiLeaks did not do that back in 2016, that Trump would not have won the election. So,
honestly, I do actually think that statement's fair. I do remember there being it went from ha 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 fucking Trump to actually holy shit, not only is his opposition corrupt, but yeah, he's actually telling the truth about these things, and that's actually quite interesting and novel in US politics. That was a big turning point.
Yeah. But then, ironically, like I said, in 2017, it was under his administration where they filed the espionage charges against Assange. So,
Yep.
and yeah, I remember Trump saying things like, "I love WikiLeaks," and then, well, bloody hell, why were you the one who filed charges against him then? Yeah. But anyway, obviously he's back. I'd like to know how much he's being offered for his first ever interview, because remember, he didn't even turn up to the press conference that they did once he arrived in Canberra. He buggered off to New South Wales pretty much straight away. So I bet he's in negotiations right now, for a pretty hefty figure on getting that first interview. So yeah,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our next story, and that is, the topic of extremism. Another story I wish we could have covered a few days ago, but anyway, again, I'm sure you're all aware, this 19-year-old guy called Jordan Patton, I don't even know if you could say he orchestrated something, because he just basically just walked around. But nonetheless, they're calling this like a botched a terror attack. So he apparently planned to behead the member for Newcastle in New South Wales, and this is not a federal MP, I might add. This is a New South Wales state member of the Legislative Assembly, Timothy Crankenthorpe. And apologies to New South Welshmen, I hadn't even heard of this guy, so I had to look him up. Right now, he's not even a minister. He was just a backbencher. He was previously Minister for Skills and Tertiary Education. Right now, he's just a lowly backbencher who is he's on the Committee of Healthcare and Complaints Commission. That's it. So he was not Jordan Patton's local member. Jordan Patton apparently lives about 2 hours north of Sydney, so he's in a regional area. Sorry, I don't know who his actual MP is. So as to why exactly he targeted this guy, I don't know. Other than him being a member of the Labor Party, and if his manifesto, I haven't read it. I've just read the snippets that are out there. Apparently, his most hated political entity is the Australian Labor Party. So, other than targeting him for being a member of the ALP, I don't know why he chose him. So, interestingly, this guy, I don't know, have you read like some of the stuff from the manifesto, Nolsey? Like some of the bits and pieces?
I've mostly just read the belly aching on fucking Twitter about this shit.
Okay,
I just fucking blah blah.
I just kind of read stuff
on quoting extremist.
Yeah, but he said he's like, look, I'm not a member of any like party or organization. However, if you want to narrow it down, I support the Liberal Party, which is interesting. Now, I don't know if this part is true, but I did read that apparently he showed admiration for Brenton Tarrant and Anders Breivik.
Yeah, a lefty fucking homosexual posted the little excerpt that's meant to be referenced. It's really a read between the lines thing. He's mostly just referencing this kind of terrorism has happened before, and basically more or less references all those instances.
Okay, so I mean, we don't know if he was directly inspired by those acts to go out and do what he did. And well, look, to talk about what he did, and again, what I'm talking about now, this I think I read either from the ABC or the Australian. I'm just going from memory here, so I'm skeptical about this. Not of my memory, but of the ABC and the Australian. But they said that apparently he had planned a number of terrorist attacks, but none of them turned out to be viable. He then settled on this terrorist attack, which was going after the Newcastle local member. And apparently he put 4 months of preparation into it. Okay, well, after 4 months of preparation, what did he actually do? He dressed up in tactical gear, put a helmet on, apparently put a camera on the helmet so he could film it. He then carried a bag that had a kitchen knife, a hammer, and a saw in it, and I think a couple of other items. He walked into the office apparently, like looked around, and I don't know. I guess he was just looking for the member. Walked back out again, and then eventually, when the police saw him, they thought, okay, guy walking around in tactical gear, that's a bit sus. They then pointed tasers at him, and he just lied on the ground and gave up straight away.
I don't know, man. Like
4 months of preparation for that.
Yeah, I don't know about no terrorist attack, man. Like camo gear, helmet, hammer, knife. That just sounds like standard thug hunting equipment to me.
What on earth did he hope to achieve by doing that? Like what?
You tell me, man. You tell me.
I mean, surely getting around in plain clothes would have been the first thing to do, so that you would avoid, people looking at you saying, why is he dressed up like that? So yeah, look, I don't know. Now, this all could be to do with the fact that he is said to be mentally ill. He's said to be autistic. Apparently, his parents have made a statement where they said he is autistic, and they're kind of saying don't blame him for this. But yeah, could we say this is, assuming that this is a form of terrorism, could we say that this is a form of conservative terrorism because he supports the Liberal Party?
It's a form of conservative terrorism because it was like non-fucking committal and gay.
Yeah, and guaranteed to not work. So yeah, in that respect, I guess so. Yeah, I don't know. That's about actually all I have to say on that, to be honest. It was just a botched attempt and just really retarded rather than autistic. Okay, look, just one quick story on extremism here. It's pretty much been ruled that the Iron Cross is not banned. Now, this came about because horse races use the Iron Cross a lot. So there was talk about how like prominent jockeys would not be able to wear the Iron Cross. But yeah, it looks like, I'm sorry, I don't know if this was a court ruling or whatever, but it has basically been confirmed that no, the Iron Cross is not considered to be an extremist or Nazi symbol. So I believe that still is confined to the Hakenkreuz and the SS rune. That's it. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to use an Iron Cross, go ahead, because apparently that's still allowed. All right, now let's turn to the other big story, of course, which is Fatima Payman. Yeah, I don't think, no, we haven't covered this. I'm sorry, we've been away so long, I have to remember this. So obviously we know she has crossed the floor. This was a motion that was put forward by the Greens. It was, as you can imagine, not voted for in the House of Reps, but nonetheless, the Greens insisted on taking it to the Senate as well. Maybe it's because they had a suspicion that Fatima Payman would vote in favour of it, and thus, they wanted the impending shit show. If that's what they wanted, well, they've surely gotten it. So she did cross the floor. The last politician to actually cross the floor and vote against the Labor Party was actually back in 1988, and that was Graham Campbell. Graham Campbell is quite possibly the best politician that the Labor Party has ever produced, because he went on to form the Australia First Party. He was also the guy who said the best contribution Paul Keating could make to Australia would be a state funeral, which I thought was a very witty line. But anyway, he was expelled from the party. The next time around, this was not quite crossing the floor, but this was the vote for the Gulf War. So this was back in 1991, I believe. Yeah, it was. And it was Bruce Childs, who was a member of the left faction of the Labor Party. He did not actually cross the floor. He abstained. Now, still, he found himself indefinitely suspended from caucus. Now, initially, Fatima Payman was only suspended from caucus for the remainder of the parliamentary sitting, which was less than 2 weeks. And that basically just means you're not allowed to sit in the party room. You can't sit in for the meetings that they have. So, yeah, that's what she was initially punished with, you could say, disciplined with. Now, since then, I watched the episode of Insiders on Sunday. I have to say this is quite possibly the most entertaining episode of Insiders I've seen in a very long time, because the first interview they had was with Richard Marles, the Deputy PM and Defence Minister, and he was on there like very uncomfortably answering questions about Fatima Payman and basically saying that he didn't believe any further disciplinary action against her was necessary. And he more or less said that, he didn't expect her to, be a naughty girl anymore and, not necessarily cross the floor, but act against the party line or stir the pot against Labor in some fashion. Fast forward about 15 minutes into the episode, they then had an in-studio interview with Fatima Payman herself. David Spears asked her, will you actually cross the floor again? And she said, any vote that comes my way, I will vote with my conscience. I'm paraphrasing here, of course. But then she was asked, well, what if another motion is set to ask for Palestinian statehood? And she said, yes, I would cross the floor again. That's the moment I went, whoa, okay, something's going to fucking happen here. She basically vowed that, yes, like on this issue, I'm not going to be moved. And yes, I will cross the floor again. I don't care what caucus tells me. Well, later that day, so in the evening on Sunday, the Labor Party then announced that she is indefinitely suspended from caucus. And that's where we sit at the moment. Now, last I read about this, I read this only about a half an hour ago. She has said since then, since that interview that she did on Sunday on Insiders, that she has been exiled from by many MPs. They're just, refusing to associate with her, refusing to talk with her. Those same MPs and many others are putting increased pressure on Albanese to simply expel her from the party. And according to the ABC, the latest rumours are that she is planning to leave the Labor Party altogether, quite possibly because she sees an expulsion from the party as inevitable, and it's best to just get in first and leave. Now, the other thing that's indicating that she's leaning in that direction of just leaving is that she's apparently been in talks with Glenn Drury, aka the preference whisperer. Now, Glenn Drury,
how to make it as an independent.
Yes, exactly. So Glenn Drury, if you don't know, he is the guy who talks to minor and micro parties and also independents and advises them on how to do preference deals to maximize their chances of getting votes, or not necessarily getting votes, but getting over the line, getting preference votes that gives them a seat in Parliament. So why would you be talking about him if you were, planning to stay a member of a major party? She really sees the writing on the wall here. And yeah, look, I think that, she's kind of taken a step too far now. She's alienated far too many people within the Labor Party. And in a way, she is embarrassing the party because she's making them look soft. They're kind of saying, well, look, if we've got a member who is this out of control, not towing the party line and is just thumbing our nose at us the whole time, well, we either keep her around and look soft, or, of course, we take the alternative and we expel her. So
it's got to be a bit of a ball-straining move for the Labor Party to do that to a brown woman.
Well, I mean, is the other aspect of this is that isn't this also another repercussion of multiculturalism, where you're bound to see diversity, thus, diverging from particular beliefs and party lines and ideological constraints. You're going to see divergence based on ethnic identity. And obviously, with her being an Arab Muslim, she is allowing her ethnic identity to take priority over her commitment to the platform of the Labour Party, thus it being a consequence of multiculturalism. That's what you get, Labour, okay, for supporting it all this time. It has bit you on the ass in the form of this rebel senator. And in many other ways, I'd argue, but, that is the most obvious example right now.
Yep.
Now, the other thing I wanted to say about this was the normie right reaction to all of this. So from the very beginning, when she crossed the floor on this, the normie right, Sky News, etc., pounced on this and said that this is Labor pandering to the Muslim minority, particularly those in Western Sydney, whom they rely on for a large chunk of their support, and also just showing that they are weak-willed, that this was merely a slap on the wrist, and they've gone really, really soft because they don't want to punish a woman who is a member of another minority. Well, I shouldn't say minority, but, victim group. Being an Arab, being a Muslim, and being a woman, they're saying, you're going soft on her just because she's a member of those categories. The first reply I would have to that is that for decades, the normie right and the coalition have been attacking Labor over their rule of expelling members for crossing the floor. So remember, this is actually written into Labor Party rules. If you cross the floor, you will be expelled from the party.
Yep.
Right. This dates back probably from the inception of the Labor Party. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing it's pretty much there from the foundation. The normie right would constantly attack Labor for being a Stalinist or an authoritarian party, for simply having that rule and implementing it. Now, all of a sudden, they're saying that Labor is too soft for not implementing it. So which one is it? You saying that they're a Stalinist party or that they're too soft? You can't have it both ways. That's the first thing to say about it. But the second thing, obviously, is that they see Fatima Payman as an enemy of Israel and the Jews. Not just because she said from the river to the sea, but because of the way she voted. They see her as a raging anti-Semite, and they're furious that Labor haven't taken a harder line on her. Now, I would agree that it is true to an extent that they're, trying to appease the Muslim vote, but not anymore, because they're on the brink of expelling her, and she's on the brink of leaving the party. If I'm going to bet one way or the other, considering the fact that she's currently talking to Glenn Drury, I think she's planning to leave, and we could see that as early as tomorrow. So yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Knowlesy? What do you think the future holds for her and the party?
No, she'll get the kick. I mean, again, this is one of the issues that. Probably. Well, but I mean, we already fucking know that she's planning on leaving. I mean, you don't talk to your man unless you want to be an independent. I actually think that she might even just get shit canned as an independent. I think that this is one of those unforgivable sins.
Well, that's an interesting point. I mean, look, obviously, if she becomes an independent, no, hold on. She's a first termer. So she'd have remember, that's 6 years in the Senate. Because remember, you go for 2 terms in the Senate. So she'd be around for a while. They wouldn't be able to shit can her unless you get a double dissolution election, which I think is very unlikely. However, I would say at the end of that 6 years, I guess it all depends on the demographics here in WA. Remember, she's a WA senator.
Yeah.
If she was from New South Wales, different story. I'd say she'd actually be pretty safe because I think she would obtain an enormous part of the Muslim vote.
Oh yeah, this would have been very popular. She could fucking start the Fuck Israel party like tomorrow if she was in fucking West Sydney.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, while it would not have that name, the emergence of like a pro-Palestinian, basically Muslim party, I would not exactly say Islamic, but Muslim party forming in Australia is a very real possibility. I'd say not before the next election because that's too soon, but quite soon after. I mean, remember we covered that. I think he was a sheikh in West Sydney who's basically planning to turf out all of those Labor MPs by running pro-Muslim, pro-Palestine candidates, independent candidates against them. So it's very possible that, instead of running independents, by the time we get to the 2028 election, you've got some kind of ethnic Muslim party running that I imagine would actually do pretty well, considering how many bloody Muslims we've got over in Sydney and elsewhere. So, yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's get off that. Off Fatima Payman, that is. What else have we got here under Israel-Palestine? Well, the protests just kind of keep continuing, don't they? The Home Affairs Minister Claire O'Neill, she's declared that pro-Palestinian protesters can't be handed a blank check for behaviour which threatens the cohesion of our society. Sorry, Claire, our cohesion was threatened and was torn apart years ago. You're just kind of seeing it in a more visible fashion now than what you were before. But yeah, look, the attacks from Labor against these protesters has intensified, particularly since you had the vandalism, or I guess you could even say arson, against Josh Burns's office, the men for McNamara in Melbourne. So they are definitely intensifying their rhetoric on that. She said, painting blood red symbols of terrorism or leaving childlike fake bodies outside offices is not properly peaceful protest. Our social cohesion is our most valuable national asset, and we cannot allow conflicts on the other side of the world to undermine or erode it. Oh my God. Well, when you import people from the other side of the world, is it any surprise to you that they are going to hold on to those issues that exist in their home countries and talk about them here? Of course they are. And what a surprise, they're actually going to get far more animated about those issues on the other side of the world than they are about local politics. Why is that? Because their identity does not lie in Australia. It lies in the Middle East. So,
and also sometimes the distance can be an attenuating factor. Sometimes it actually breathes this kind of filter of desperation onto something people dying in Palestine, etc., or some level of helplessness, which makes them more active and vocal about it.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, she's acting outraged that people are getting people care about these international issues more than they do about Australian politics domestically. And it's did you really only figure out now that these people you're importing from the other side of the world care about those issues and actually care about them more than they do about domestic issues? Why is that so surprising to you? Okay, last story on Israel and Gaza. The Executive Council of Australian Jewry, the UCAJ, they have condemned the City of Sydney Council. They passed a motion to investigate divesting from companies involved in, quote, human rights abuses in Palestine. So this motion passed basically in consideration of the demands of the BDS movement. We've talked before about freighting companies that have been involved in providing supplies to the IDF. Not ammunition and weapons, but nonetheless, they're still providing what?
Diapers.
Well, perhaps, but they're still providing supplies to the IDF. They're assisting in the military campaign in Gaza in some way or another. Okay, so the co-CEO Peter Wertheim said the council was guilty of muddled morality. What was it? Oh, Sydney City Council has shown spectacular ineptitude in its latest foray into international affairs. It has acknowledged the terrorist atrocities committed by Hamas in Israel last year, but has decided to punish not the perpetrators but the victims for having the temerity to defend themselves. Well, okay, pretty typical rhetoric coming from CAJ there.
Little Satan.
Right. Oh, and also, if you haven't figured it out, the City of Sydney Council is also loaded with Muslims. So, again, not surprising at all that they would pass such a motion, and it's another example of the multicultural golem coming back to bite you in the ass. All right, let's talk about climate and energy. And, of course, we're going to be talking about nuclear to kick it off. So last week on the ABC, I think I saw the most amount of anti-nuclear articles. They were often kind of presented in the form of a question where they would say, where would Australia store its nuclear waste? And I wish Bob Hawke was still
anywhere.
Alive. Right, because if Bob Hawke was alive, he would basically tell you, well, yeah, basically anyway. Do you have any idea how much uninhabited or uninhabitable desert land we have in Australia where you could actually quite easily store an almost endless amount of nuclear waste? It's quite incredible the amount of space that we have for it. Anyway, all right. So the first issue here that I had was to do with the cost. Now, Peter Dutton has claimed that the energy plan will cost a fraction of Labor's pursuit of renewable energy, which, yes, I think is absolutely true. But let me just read out. He made a speech at, where was this? Liberal Party Federal Council in Sydney. And he was mainly talking about energy policy here. So he said, as Australians, we will soon see our plan will cost a fraction of the government's $1.3 trillion plan, a figure not even the Prime Minister, cricket team of Labor spin doctors can conceal. Okay, now, look, obviously I have not crunched the numbers on this $1.3 trillion plan, but that actually sounds pretty close to the mark to me. The estimates for the nuclear reactors, like the large-scale nuclear reactors that I've read, pretty much all of them have been under $10 billion.
Yeah.
Now, just think about, the best example I think always is to talk about Snowy Hydro 2.0. This was implemented under the Turnbull government. It was Malcolm Turnbull's feather in his cap when it came to climate change. And it has been under construction for about 10 years now. Now, remember, if we want to also talk about time as well as cost, nuclear reactors are said to take less than 10 years. In fact, I'm sorry I don't have it on me, but I read that the average amount of time to build a new reactor around the world is actually about 8 years. Okay. Snowy Hydro not only has been going 10 years, but we have no end in sight for it. They keep tunneling into areas where they're blocked, and they have to kind of go back to the drawing board and figure out how they're going to continue with that particular tunnel. So God knows it might take another 10 years to get it done. But also, the initial budget for Snowy Hydro was $2 billion. Do you know what the cost blowouts are to date? $12 billion. Okay, well, the total cost is $12 billion. That means the cost has blown out by $10 billion. And like I said, there's no end in sight. So God knows how much extra we're going to spend on that thing. So when you take that into account, you take into account the wind farms, the solar generation, the solar farms that, say, like the ones that they built in Queensland and then took apart again, I can definitely see that adding up to around $1.3 trillion, especially considering we've been investing in all this crap actually since the Howard years, albeit the late stages of the Howard years. We've been investing in this stuff for a very, very long time. I will agree, though. I did hear some commentators saying that it was a mistake for Peter Dutton to release the planned locations of the nuclear reactors without first putting out the costings. I think it would have been a better tactic if he had waited a bit, especially considering the next election is nearly a year away. So that is one thing they can pin them on, is to say, okay, you say it's cheaper, but you don't have your costings at the moment. Yeah. Conversely, though, Labor don't have costings either. It's worth pointing that out. All right.
And conversely, though, even if they did put the costings out, if they're honest, the budget for the renewables grid would be fucking horrendous. And if they're not honest, it'll be picked apart pretty fucking swiftly.
Yeah, I mean, look, they do put out, do it. They put out costings for some individual projects, not all of them. Definitely not all of them. So, it's very hypocritical of them to demand like full costings for all 7 reactors that the coalition plan to build. But at the same time, like I said before, they're always subject to cost blowouts as well. And yeah, when it comes to the overall renewable plan and how much that costs or how long it'll take, no, we don't have any timelines and we don't have any overall costings. So yeah, they're quite hypocritical in that regard. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. My next story was actually on timing of it, so we can skip that. Oh, yeah. So, well, all right. Again, we already kind of commented on this one. This was on nuclear waste, but I'll just read just a little bit from this ABC article. So, low-level waste in the form of medical equipment, clothing, and face masks is stored at around 100 locations, despite plans for decades to build one centralized facility. Okay, now that low-level waste they're referring to, that is the low-level waste that is produced by that very, very small reactor that you have in Lucas Heights in Sydney. We've talked about this before. It's like basically none of that power is put on the grid. It's just research purposes, I believe, for medicine.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the main purpose of it. Okay, so they said that it's stored at around 100 locations. Okay, that's because of current environmental regulations. Now, I was talking about Bob Hawke before and how he supported storing nuclear waste in Australia. He was saying that we needed to change environmental regulations so that we could actually allocate certain sites within uninhabitable desert regions of Australia, large-scale sites, and then we could basically just put all of our waste in there. Current regulations say that you can only store a very, very, very small amount in a particular location. And that's why this pissy level of low-level waste is stored at around 100 locations around Australia. That's true, but it's because of the shitty laws that we've got on the books at the moment. So obviously what the ABC was getting at here was if you need around 100 locations to store low-level waste, well, what happens when you start producing high-level waste? Where are you going to put it?
Big hole in the desert.
Yeah. But, look, this is why, unfortunately, it is true that it's not as simple as simply just building those 7 reactors. You've got the state's bans on nuclear power to get over. You've got other forms of environmental regulation, and you've also got, as I was just saying, these constraints on where to actually store the waste. And, that's because of decades of legislation and lawfare in this country where green groups have been successful in really making it as difficult as possible to roll out some form of nuclear energy program in Australia.
Yeah.
Okay, yep.
That's just yep. The fuck do you say to that? It's like they're just being dicks. They're being obstructionist dicks. It's like basically that's like they're one of three little cards they play: lawfare, being obstructionist dicks through state policy, or screaming in public.
All right. Well, I wanted to actually, Mr. Science Man, maybe I could get your take on this one, because this one was mocked and ridiculed by the anti-nuclear mob, as you can imagine. But Peter Dutton said, if you look at a 450 megawatt reactor, it produces waste equivalent to the size of a can of Coke each year. Like,
yeah.
What do you think of that? You think that's about true?
Yeah, that's about right. Maybe even smaller, to be honest. Like half a gigawatt, round about that size. I mean, they basically, when you see the fuel rods of a modern day nuclear reactor, you really only go through about like they're made of these little stacked pellets, and the pellets are about like half an inch thick and about like an inch in diameter or smaller. You only go through about 10 of those pellets a year, so that might be a little under a soda can.
Right. Okay, what about this? I can pick your brain again on this one. They were talking about how is building a nuclear reactor near a fault line, is that dangerous because of the threat of earthquakes? And of course, this makes everyone think of Fukushima in Japan, where there was an earthquake and the nuclear plant was damaged. But I don't like they did not experience a meltdown or any major.
That was contaminated water.
Yeah,
it wasn't actually a meltdown.
Any three-eyed fish.
No. It's one of the. I don't think you'll ever get three-eyed fish from irradiated contaminated water. I think you'll just get dead fish. Or basically like super cancer, like slightly cancer-resistant animals, like you do in fucking Chernobyl. Or animals that have a shortened lifespan because they just perpetually have cancer. But yeah, no, it's one of those things. And also, where the fuck is a fault line in this country?
Right. Well, the article did make the point that seismic activity in Australia, compared to other countries, is like basically zero. But they're like, nonetheless, it's still a risk.
Dude, fucking, like, I was in Japan for only like a few fucking weeks, and like, while I was there, I felt like fucking 5 to 6 different tremors.
Yeah, it's bad there. You would not want to have like a phobia, or if that would show, like be constantly.
Not at all, but yeah, no, it's just a fucking dumb question to ask for this country. I mean, we are the most like fucking geotectonically stable. Like we are literally a plate. This country doesn't share plates. It's not made out of multiple plates. We don't really have gigantic fucking mountain ranges because we do not have a fucking plate separation in our country. We are one gigantic fucking plate. We are stable. We don't have like really dumb fucking like weather events outside of like maybe floods and fires in certain parts of the country.
Right. Yeah, no, that was my first reaction. I was like, okay, like, can you tell me like the last bloody earthquake we had here? Because I can't remember. Okay, next ABC article. This was where they said the coalition is unable to provide details about the amount of power that would be generated by its nuclear reactors. Okay, so this came about because Ted O'Brien on Insiders, this is the week before, did an interview where he admitted that. I watched this interview, and he made the corollary point again, which is, okay, can Labor tell you the exact amount of power to be produced from their renewable plan? No, of course they can't. No one can. How could you put like a precise figure on that? Like once we have all of these places like up and going, considering the fact that you have to account for numerous other variables like other forms of power and potential outages and gas supplies and coal supplies and population growth and everything like that, the amount of variables in it is enormous. And you see, that is a question. This was, of course, David Spears, a question that he put to Ted O'Brien. That question would never be put to Chris Bowen, who's the energy minister. Please tell us the exact amount of energy generation that would occur under your renewables plan. As if he would fucking know. As if the Greens would know under their plan. No one would know.
Oh god, it's just fucking annoying. It's so fucking annoying. We've got this like one nice, neat little answer staring us in our face, and now we're like fucking going and putting like, you know what we're doing with fucking Collie? We're not like, fucking securing their jobs or maybe like, doing some genuine investment, maybe retraining or attempting to retrain some of those people or attempting to alleviate the coming economic stress. No, we're building a fucking wind farm, a hop, skip, and a jump outside their little town. Yeah, mate, it's like a giant fuck you.
Right. Okay. Now the last story I've got here on nuclear, and this goes to when you say the answer is staring us right in the face. Another thing that stares us right in the face here is our vast quantities of uranium deposits. Currently, we have 3 mines. That is all that legislation allows. We're only allowed to access 3 mines of uranium. And every last bit of it is exported. And most of it, where it goes? To India, where they do have nuclear weapons and are not a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So we'll actively supply a nuclear power with uranium. So Ted O'Brien, the shadow energy minister, said, well, look, we have to reconsider actually unlocking more uranium and mining more of it. Because remember, we're only mining the stuff, enough of it to export. Well, what are we going to do when we actually need
if you actually look at if you actually look at like our mining process for uranium, we're not at no given point there is no project that is directly going after uranium. It's always uranium and then X, Y, Z, and other processed or normally like transition metals and etc. So yeah, like literally the uranium that we're actually kind of putting together, like kind of concentration, slurring it and packaging it for transport. That's a byproduct. We're not purposely going after uranium. If we were to purposely go after fucking uranium, holy Christ, you know where uranium likes to collect?
So is that how they're able to operate those 3 mines? Like it's actually kind of a loophole?
Yep.
That is it. Okay. Oh, interesting.
Yep. But yeah, uranium likes to collect on ancient reefs. That's where America got its uranium from. That's where Russia got its uranium from. Parts of their landmass that were ancient reefs. You know what the entirety of Australia was?
What?
An ancient reef. Our entire country is an ancient reef. That's why our background radiation is actually a couple clicks higher than normal.
Right. Okay. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, but also, just in terms of, the cost. Well, imagine if we were able to just source our uranium domestically. We just get it from an Australian uranium mine. That obviously would make the supply a lot cheaper and thus make nuclear energy even more cheap in the long term. So, yeah, and Ted O'Brien talking about this, this is another example of how the nuclear war, or the war for nuclear energy in Australia is multi-front. It's not just about building reactors. We've got to tear apart all of this bullshit green regulation about uranium mining and so forth to actually get a proper, stable nuclear energy market going in this country. So yeah. Okay. All right. Now, more reasons why. We're getting off nuclear, but we're getting onto more reasons why we bloody need it. So we've got some new data on how much electricity bills have gone up. So between 2022 and 2023, our competition regulator found that they went up by 18%. What's the inflation rate, which we'll talk about a bit later? It's currently 4%. All right. So obviously, electricity prices and power prices generally are going up at rates exceedingly higher than the CPI. So you can't just blame the inflation rate. This is a direct result of green energy policy that is pushing up these prices.
Yeah. I mean, like, part of the creation of energy prices, just because, like, just the nature of electricity, it has to be consumed in the moment that it's generated, is speculative. What the fuck are you seeing in the energy market right now? What the fuck are you seeing in the physical infrastructure of the electrical grid? You're seeing crashes, volatilities, and fucking talks of future brownouts as a mandatory fucking, like, load shedding policy. We're talking about, like, literally fucking shithole country South Africa fucking levels of, like, governing our electrical grid. What do you think that's going to do to the price?
That's a neat segue into the next story, actually.
There we go.
So we had so this is the 2024 Integrated System Plan. This is basically a report put out by the energy regulator AEMO, however the hell you want to say it. Now, they've said that Australia faces power blackouts unless regional communities back the acceleration of renewable energy and construction of 10,000 kilometres worth of transmission lines. Now, basically, what like in a nutshell, what the Green Energy Plan is for all of the coal that we take out of the energy grid, all of the coal fire stations that we close down, they have to be replaced with a certain amount of transmission lines to power green energy, to source green energy, to transmit green energy. In a nutshell, that's basically what it is. AMO is saying no.
We're talking about the Muslim Party for next election?
Yeah.
Yeah. New party called it the Muslim Vote is getting traction now because of exactly what we said.
So they actually exist. Well, to be fair,
just formed, brand fucking new. They only just stepped up. They're originally just a minor kind of like, fucking bulletin board of the mosque thing, and now because of the treatment of Fatima, yeah.
Right. All right. Well, that's quicker than I thought. I did say I predicted one, but I said next election.
And guess which seats they're targeting?
Well, West Sydney.
Yeah, but also Labor seats. Well, and actually that goes without saying. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're the ones. It's just like Teal's targeting Liberal Party seats because they're the ones that they can win. They're people who previously voted for the Liberals and then moved away, just like Muslims previously voted Labor and are currently moving away because of their position on Palestine. But anyway, back to this report put out by AMO. So they said here that they expect the majority of all coal power generation to have nearly exited the system by 2035, and the remaining few would have to be mothballed by 2038, which the market operator said required urgent delivery of replacements. Now, we've spoken a lot about how in regional areas, they're the ones, unfortunately, stuck with having to cop all of these, many kilometres of transmission lines to run green energy. We've also spoken about how the process involved in this, they do have committee hearings there, and they're basically being bullied into fast tracking all of these projects. So, they're getting fucked over where the government and the regulators and that are just saying, shut up, we want to build these transmission lines and just let us do it quickly. Well, here we can see why. Because we simply do not have enough green energy to replace coal energy on time. And according to AMO, we're actually facing blackouts as a result. So what does that mean? The poor old redneck has to swallow his pride and just have to put up with these fucking transmission lines being built through their regional towns.
Suck shit, redneck.
Also, sorry, one other thing that was put out by this report. When you take into account the construction of those transition lines, and also the, everything else that has to go with it, like wind turbines and solar farms and all that kind of stuff, that plan leading up to 2050 would cost $122 billion. Now, how much would the 7 reactors cost put together? I'd say it'd be a bit less than that. And those 7 reactors would be able to supply a shit ton more energy than all of these green energy projects. And guess what? They wouldn't require any transmission lines out in regional areas either.
I know, but like, it doesn't bring down, systems of oppression. And I'm not joking. I've quite literally heard that.
Okay. Now, switching from coal to gas now. So this was an exclusive in the Australian newspaper about a week ago. They said that the energy regulator cautioned the industry, that is the gas industry, that the largest supplier of gas storage on the East Coast, so that is Lockhart Energy's Iona facility in the northeast Victoria, could run out of gas before the end of this winter. Now, I love, when I read about this eventually on the ABC, they were pointing out that, some were predicting that this winter would be particularly cold. So, they're trying to say, oh, no, it's not because of, a shortage of gas or anything like that. It's just because this is a real anomaly of a winter that we're heading into. Well, I don't know. We've just done a month of winter, and it doesn't seem that out of the ordinary to me. But anyway, of course, our gas reserves have been under increased pressure because of the fact that we need gas to manage that transition. So, what I was just talking about, going from coal to renewable, you obviously can't do it overnight. So you've got to implement some form of fossil fuel in the meantime, and that is gas. And it is now looking like this particular facility in Victoria could run out or almost run out of gas entirely by the end of August.
Christ.
So, this guy's name. So this Orica, which is a major supplier of explosives to the mining industry, their president, his name is German Morals. I shit you not. I don't know where the fuck he got that name from. But anyway, he said, there is not enough gas and there is not enough affordable gas. Clearly, if we fail to secure long-term gas at a reasonable market price, we may be put in a position of rethinking what is the manufacturing strategy for anomia in Australia. The Australian gas price is significantly more expensive than you can buy in other jurisdictions, such as the US. That is making it very difficult to justify manufacturing in Australia. This is obviously, he's talking about manufacturing in Victoria in particular. But this is nationwide, though. If you have a shortage of gas, obviously the price is going to go up. Manufacturers need a shitload of gas to be able to produce their goods. And if their costs are put up too high, well, what happens? They move offshore. And I think we've had our fair share of manufacturers move offshore in this country.
We have the entire goddamn fucking industry nearly.
Yeah, well, I mean, the car industry is entirely outsourced now. It is entirely gone, All right. So in the Northern Territory, not much better there. So their shortfall in gas supply has cost $43.4 million to taxpayers for the 2023 to 24 year, and is set to cost another $24.3 million 2024 to 2025. That's according to the Power and Water Corporation. So that comes as a black tip gas field that is operated by Eni, I think it's called, gas company, continues to fall short of demand, leaving PwC to rely on emergency gas agreements with LNG exporters. And that gas doesn't come from the Northern Territory, I might add. Now, why is it that we're in a position here where we have to actually implement emergency agreements with gas exporters?
Because they're a bunch of fucking spastics.
Yes, I think so. Okay, now, just quickly, we covered last week that New South Wales former Treasurer, Matt Keane, he's leaving politics. He announced that he was going into the private sector and specifically the green energy sector. Well, he's also been snatched up by the Albanese government. So he's going to lead the Climate Change Authority, which is one of the many regulators we have on climate change and energy in this country. As if we needed another one, and as if we need Matt Keane to lead it. Now, he's due to advise the government on a 2035 emissions target in October. So remember, it is still the policy of the Labor government to have a 2035 emissions reduction target. They just haven't given us the precise number yet.
Okay.
Another quick story. Just in Queensland, I imagine this would have actually been a pretty big story when it happened. But you had like this big explosion at a generator that caused blackouts, obviously, but also pushed up the electricity prices all around Queensland at the time. Now, this is Queensland CS Energy. It's been announced that they're going to be broken up, and that was after an inquiry, and the report found that there was organizational chaos and cost cutting. So what was interesting here was that because we obviously face a kind of energy crisis, that is completely of our own doing. There's no need to have an energy crisis in this country if we actually harnessed our energy properly. But because, many plants are really struggling to actually keep up with demand, essentially CS Energy was said, well, look, when it comes to power generation, that's your number one priority. So when it comes to things like safety, for example, we basically give you permission to cut corners and cut costs so that you can more effectively put energy on the grid. So this shows that, yes, even basic things like safety at these plants are now put at risk because of the increased pressure to put more power into the grid. Because they struggle so much, and we have Labor governments across the board in this country, they want to mitigate any further embarrassment they have regarding power prices going up or a shortage of power, that they're actually saying, hey, cut costs and don't worry about safety. Now, obviously, in this case, it's ironic because it had resulted in an explosion that actually put up the prices. But it just goes to show these are the kind of situations that we're left in now.
This is your reality. Don't cry. You were gay and asked for this.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh, wait. So Also, regarding gas, so the VCCI Securing Our Energy Future paper. So I believe this is a regulator in Victoria. They said also that Victoria is at risk of gas shortages and price spikes becoming the norm for residential, commercial, and industry users. They said a lack of backup gas power generation with its firming capacity to support renewable energy production and storage capacity puts the entire east coast of Australia's energy security at risk. Victoria's energy choices impact the entire nation. So, yeah. We don't offer any good news here on climate change. Maybe when we get a nuclear reactor online in a few years' time, maybe there'll be something good to say.
Assuming that, our conservatives over here don't, purposely tank it by being retarded.
Yeah, and they might. I mean, we just spoke about Matt Keane there.
Yeah.
It was of the Liberal Party. Okay, so on to immigration. Now, we've got a couple more stories, a couple more examples. We seem to add to these every week or every 2 weeks now. People who were let into the community, let out of immigration detention after indefinite detention was ruled to be illegal. So we have a convicted people smuggler and a serious domestic violence offender. This guy attacked his victim with a knife and doused her bedroom with petrol. It doesn't say if he lit it on fire, but I assume he did. These men are both Iranian, argue that they'd be persecuted if they returned back to Iran. They had no other immigration avenues, so of course they just languished in indefinite detention, and now because of the ruling, they're set free. We also have a Tongan man who was twice convicted over involvement in separate fatal road accidents, and we have a New Zealand sex offender. And
I thought you weren't going to talk about me.
I'm sorry, these two, the New Zealand sex offender and the Tongan, this is not a result of the indefinite detention ruling. This is a result of Directive 99. Remember that one? That's where they're about to be deported, but then the tribunal has to take into account their roots in Australia.
Yep.
And, if they can say, well, they've got family and friends here, maybe they got a job. Well, we can overlook their extensive criminal history.
We can overlook your brutal rape.
Yeah, and just let you stay in the country. What a system we run. Oh, and by the way, because it is now the new financial year, thankfully Directive 99 is no longer in place. We now have Directive, I think it was 110, and that one instructs the tribunal to hold community safety as paramount. But remember, Andrew Giles only did that under sustained public pressure. All right. Okay, now, in regards to the emergency immigration laws that Labor tried to pass in response to the High Court ruling on indefinite detention, this included things like basically, forcing them to apply for passports and things like that. Some of it actually looked pretty good, but guess what? It's been shelved. That basically means it's gone forever, okay? It passed the lower house, it went to the Senate, the Liberals blocked it. I'm thinking now, considering what's happened, that was a bad move for the Liberals. They demanded a Senate inquiry. So did the Greens, but the Greens would have never voted for it in any form anyway. That's been shelved. We've got an election coming up in less than a year, so I don't think it's certainly not going to come back before the next election, and I don't see any reason why a future Labor government would reintroduce it. This was basically a spur-of-the-moment thing to deal with the amount of bad publicity they got because of that High Court ruling and because of the fact it caught them off guard. They didn't have any legislation at the ready to kind of deal with those detainees who were suddenly released, many of whom, were violent criminals and sex offenders. Now, also, there's not to do with immigration, but guess what? Religious freedom. That's off the agenda now as well. And this is something I predicted, right? It's actually followed a very similar trajectory as what it did in 2019 when Scott Morrison wanted to introduce what was going to be called the Religious Freedom Act, I believe, or the Religious Discrimination Bill. Now, he did actually introduce legislation to Parliament, but it didn't pass the lower house because of maverick backbenchers in the Liberal Party like Trent Zimmerman, who's gay, and Bridget Archer, who always votes for gay things. In this case,
you're gay.
In this case, Labor never actually put forth any legislation. Instead, they just had an endless consultation process where they were consulting with the LGBT community, consulting with the religious community, consulting with private schools and other stakeholders and everything. Countless amounts of petitions and lobbying efforts were made. And then here we are for the second time that's been shelved too. But yeah, it's no surprise to me. All right, one quick sob story from the ABC about immigration was... oh
no, not again.
Yeah. So if you're a migrant to Australia, you're probably discriminated on the grounds of superannuation. So it says the average balance for those from a non-English speaking background at retirement is about 30% lower than the general population, at 320,000 compared to 460,000.
That's probably because they're joining the Australian workforce at a
late stage.
Later age. Yeah, I mean, basically, like in most other countries, especially like developing countries, and then that's where we get most of our fucking brown people from. It's paycheck to mouth quite a lot. So that you're not talking about savings, and I imagine savings aren't even taken into account in this case. But also, if you're non-English speaking, it probably means you weren't born here, and if you weren't born here, it probably means you weren't here working in your late teens and early 20s, if not later. So yeah. Fuck off.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to Aboriginal news. So we might remember the story where in the Senate, Lydia Thorpe accused a fellow Indigenous senator, that is, not senator, member for Lingari, Marian, Scrimegur. I don't know how the hell to say her name there, I'm sorry. Anyway, she's a Northern Territory MP. She used to be chief executive of the Northern Land Council. This is one of those Aboriginal native title groups. Anyway, Lydia Thorpe accused her of appropriating $400,000 worth of COVID-19 stimulus funding. And yes, these land councils got a shitload of COVID money back when they were handing that money out. And accused her of using that $400,000 of buying a holiday property. Now,
Jesus fucking Christ, Aboriginal officials not be corrupt for 10 fucking seconds challenge. Impossible.
Yeah.
Impossible.
And this is classic third world politics, because corruption is the system in government in third world countries. It's always expected of politicians and bureaucrats to just skim money off the top and use it for themselves. I love the example of Jacob Zuma, the ex-president of South Africa, the guy who said it didn't matter that he had sex with a woman who had AIDS without a condom because he had a shower afterwards. But he skimmed literally millions of dollars out of the South African treasury, and he used it for renovations on his mansion. It's basically, without a shadow of doubt, he did it. So, when I now hear about, slightly higher agency Aborigines who are involved in both bureaucracy and politics, using government money to pay for property. I am not the least bit surprised. But anyway, she's now threatening to sue Lydia Thorpe for defamation for saying that. Now, not because of what she said in the Senate, because of course that would be under parliamentary privilege, but it was to do with posts that she allegedly made on social media. I'm sorry, I haven't read those.
Does Lydia Thorpe just have like a problem not being cunty?
Well, I mean, look,
I know what she's saying here is like fucking, I guess, correct.
But remember, she's actually going after an Aboriginal, though. That's
yeah. She's right in doing this. This is actually one of the few instances where I say she's right in doing this. But like, I don't know, she just can't help herself, can she?
Well, if you're saying that, like, you know, that urge just to be provocative,
keep it inside a parliament.
When she should have had more sense to put it on social media, that's for sure. You know, if she was a little bit more measured in her judgment, she should not have been, you know, as impulsive enough to go and just post it on social media. Because you should know that, yeah, someone can go after you then. That's when the lawyers can get you. So, you know, you want to make comments like that, you do it in the parliament and you don't do it anywhere else.
Yep.
Unfortunately, you know, that's what David Lionhelm should have done as well when he said, "Stop shagging men" to Sarah Hanson Young, if we remember those comments.
Oh, man.
Okay. So there's going to be an inquiry that is from the federal government into what is actually our largest Aboriginal justice service. So our Indigenous Affairs Minister is Linda Burney. She said that she is deeply concerned about the situation at the North Australian Aboriginal Justice Agency. This is because their leader beat up his pregnant partner. Apparently stepped on her stomach as well while she was pregnant.
The fuck?
Yeah. So the board, though, that appointed this guy, Hugh Woodbury, is actually standing by him. Now, they did know at the time of this assault, and also this isn't the only thing he's done. He's got a record. He's got a violent history, this guy, as you can imagine.
Fucking sounds like it, man. Fucking sounds like it. Those some creative levels of violence. That's not some newbie level shit right there.
Yeah. Now, they're standing by him, and they're basically saying, look, anyone who has cleaned up their act deserves a second shot at life. Yeah, I don't know, because, you know, this justice service, what they're actually primarily tasked with is preventing domestic violence. So when you've got a guy who literally stood on his pregnant girlfriend's stomach, you know, it's not exactly he's not exactly the best salesman for that organization, I don't think. So anyway, Linda Burney said, it's time for the board of the NAAJA to show leadership when it comes to family violence. We all have a responsibility to lead by example. It's time for the board to step up and ensure Aboriginal people who need services from NAAJA are being supported. But yeah, this has been dragging on for a few weeks now. I remember we talked about this quite a while ago. And as far as I know, this organization is not giving up. They're still standing by this guy. Is it maybe because there's a shortage of alternatives? Like just every candidate stood on a woman's stomach at some point?
Yeah, I was going to say that's a odd swollen belly to stand on. Yeah, that one fell flat. Yeah, it deserved to.
Well, if you remember it later, we can still maybe make it the show title.
Dude, that's too fucked, man.
Yeah,
it's just too fucked.
That's true. That's true. Okay, now, do we remember this one? A Perth grandmother, Indigenous community leader, and former candidate of the Greens, Donna Nelson. She is in custody in Japan for allegedly importing 1.9 kilos of, quote, illegal stimulant. It's most likely meth, I'd say, from that description. Now, Japan, as you can imagine, is one of the worst places you can get busted for drugs, especially if you're intending to supply it. I don't think they do the death penalty for it. That's, left to the more so-called authoritarian Asian countries like Vietnam and Singapore. Singapore, they'll definitely kill you for it.
The Japanese don't act like fucking BNs, so they don't need like brutal punishments. But yeah, jungle Asians do act like fucking BNs.
But still, you're looking at decades in jail.
Yes. Yeah.
You're looking at like an Aboriginal Chappelle Corby here, I think.
Oh yeah.
You're looking at a pretty bloody long sentence. Anyway, this trial was due to start very soon. But apparently, it was actually due to start a few days ago, but it's just been delayed. We really don't have any information on why, unfortunately. And I was sort of looking forward to this one.
Look, yeah. Japanese courts go one way and one way only. She will be convicted.
More than likely, yeah. I mean, I would just kind of say the Asian courts generally. I mean, I doubt Chappelle Corby or the Bali Nine ever stood a chance. Whenever anyone imports anything into Singapore, you hear about them. Like a year later, they're bloody put to death. They don't fuck around in these countries when it comes to drugs. So, But yeah, her family, like her Aboriginal family, has flown into Japan. Is this like quite possibly the first time in history that has ever happened? I mean, you just don't see
probably the most Aboriginals in Japan at any given point in time.
But I have. I mean, not that I've done a hell of a lot of traveling, but I've never seen an Aboriginal person overseas. Never.
Does New Zealand count?
Yeah, that's an overseas country. You've seen them there.
Yeah, I saw an Aboriginal in New Zealand once. And it wasn't just a fucked up Polynesian, it was actually an Aboriginal.
You're quite sure of that?
Yes.
All right. Well, anyway, let's move on to crime. We like to always put that after the A News.
Talking about Aboriginals.
Yes. So here in WA, what is this? Oh, damn it. Why didn't I put the name of this prison in here? Anyway, we've got a regional prison in the West Kimberley, which is near... it is. It's called the West Kimberley Regional Prison. And so that is near Derby, obviously.
Creatively named. Oh, yeah. It would have to be fucking Derby, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Derby, if you don't know, is just, shit tons of Aborigines there. Anyway, the Inspector of Custodial Services has handed down 14 recommendations into dealing with this particular prison. They're not all that well resourced, being very, very remote. If you don't know, the Kimberley is like the northwest of this country. It's like out in absolute bumfuck nowhere. But they're dealing with decreases in staffing, as you can imagine, but also an ever-increasing rate of prisoners. So, Aboriginal crime is just continuing to get more and more out of control. And, dare I say, it's the usual things. I would say, like, the increase in meth is an issue. But, abolishing the cashless welfare card.
Yeah.
Getting rid of dry zones and things like that is just causing crime to get out of control. And, also the fact that they're allowed to post they're not allowed to, but they still do it, post their crimes on social media. And they, very often, a lot of the time, the judge is just very lenient on them. They always go on about how like they're a victim of the white justice system. The fact of the matter is, if you look at the sentences that are handed out to both adult offenders and juveniles, Aboriginal offenders are always given a more lenient sentence. Always.
Oh yeah. Dude, you can see it in like when they actually do get sentenced. Like, if you assault someone, maybe on your first fucking thing, you'll get like the community service, blah 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 blah. But second thing, you go to prison. Aboriginal kids, actually, when they do get, basically do actually get a fucking charge, which takes a while. It's like their 6th or 7th fucking sentencing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, when it comes to juveniles, you will either get put into detention for something like really serious, like murder or rape, or if it's, say, something like burglaries. I'm not kidding. You've got to do it like at least 10 times. I shit you not.
Oh yeah.
It takes about that number until they will actually put you away. Now, it's not quite like that for adults, but they're still pretty lenient on them. Okay, just one other quick story in Victoria. One of their most notorious jails, which is Port Phillip Prison, they're actually closing it down. So this is to do with a new facility that is being opening. Is it? And I think it's opening soon. I'm not quite sure, but this is a 1,200 bed prison in Geelong. And that's after 59 years of operation. So basically they're all just going to be transported there. But look, there seems to be this trend of like, in Australia of, they hear about things like inmates out of control, like assaults, and the solution is always just, well, let's just close it down. Well, all you're doing then is just moving them to another facility, and which is exactly what's happening here. I really don't see how moving them to another facility is going to change things. I mean, all of the staff, well, actually, that's written in the article here. The staff who were working there are either being offered other jobs in the public system, or they're being offered jobs at the new prison. So, it's just same shit, different facility. And of course, they're basically planning to do that in the Northern Territory. What's that? Oh man, why have I forgotten the name of that one? But also, there's calls to do it here with Banksia Hill. They want to just shut the whole thing down.
The Kimberley regional facility. Yeah. Dude. I mean, look, it was coming up to more than a year ago now. I talked about that one nursing position where they're offering a registered nurse over $250,000 a year in salary plus bonuses. It's fucking desperate. No one wants to deal with these fucking subhumans.
Dondale's the one.
Dondale, yeah, okay.
Go on.
Oh yeah. But yeah, no. And basically, there's only one politically viable solution to any kind of conflict, and it's not, basically bringing down the fucking cudgel on these people like it should be, fucking hosing them down with cold water in the middle of winter like it fucking should be. No, it's capitulation. It's getting the little fucking feral kids KFC when they go and fucking clock a female guard over the head with a rock.
Yeah. That's why, look, man, I'd say bring back corporal punishment. Like, I don't actually agree with parents hitting kids. I agree with Stefan Molyneux on that, who I have not watched in so long. But I do think that, with the state's monopoly on violence, the state should be able to mete out corporal punishment. And I think that would be particularly effective for
we should have thug hunted Stefan Molyneux when we had the chance.
Oh, the poor guy. He gets on Odyssey. He gets about as many views as we do.
Dude, it's man, how the greats have fallen. Poor guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, again, you need to speak these fucking ferals languages. Unfortunately, their language is violence.
It is. That's why tribal elders, Aboriginal elders, and I completely agree with them here. I stand in total solidarity with them. They want to bring back tribal punishment that includes things like spearings in the leg. They basically say, no, the white man system is not harsh enough. Let us deal with it, and we'll make sure we bring down the level of crime. And I completely agree with them. All right, let's move on to drugs. And, well, sort of. We're going to talk about vaping. So, well, okay, we're recording this on the 2nd of July. So, yesterday, the first day of the new financial year, we had the Commonwealth's new regulations come in regarding the buying and selling of vape products. So, let's go through some of those changes. So, from yesterday, vapes containing nicotine can only be legally sold by pharmacies to people who have a prescription from their doctor. Now, there's another stage.
Retard stream is most affected.
So also, like the second stage of this is this won't kick in until the 1st of October. Pharmacies can sell vapes containing nicotine to anyone over 18 years old, which will eliminate the need for a medical prescription. So yeah, that's weird. Like you can get vapes containing nicotine right now from pharmacies if you have a prescription, and then after October 1st, you don't need one. Weird.
Fucking weird.
People under the age of 18 will need a medical prescription before they can legally purchase a vape from a pharmacist.
That is just concerning. Like, societally, that's concerning, right? Like, why the fuck... Like, a kid under no circumstance could buy fucking cigarettes at that age. Why the fuck would they be, say, medically permitted to buy a vaping device?
Right. Now, look, as far as I know, the main reason that they give you a medical prescription for a vape, for vaping, is because you've got an addiction to cigarettes. And it's designed, it's like giving methadone to a heroin addict. It's like a lesser version that helps you wean yourself off it. So, I don't know. I guess, are we to assume that there's a large amount of people under 18 who have a tobacco addiction, and that's what they're doing? I don't know.
It's one of those little notes. It's one of those little notes, you have to make when, like, it's like, yeah, our society is actually kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
Like on a deep level. And this is just like something that can be said as a passing comment, and you're not actually meant to dig into it too deep. And this is why this is kind of jarring for us and why we're actually digging into it, because me and Finian are sane people who want to live in a sane society.
Just barely, yeah. No, it would be nice. Yeah, look, I've always said, like, I found I think a lot of people just kind of went to vapes because they thought it was like a safer alternative. That's like smoking without quite the amount of health consequences that you would get smoking tobacco. But I've just always been very skeptical about that. I mean, literally putting a vapor on your lungs. That can't be a good thing, and obviously, there's an element of agnosticism to it as well, because we just don't have the long-term studies when it comes to the effects of vaping, because it's such a new thing. So, yeah. Plus, I just hate the smell of it as well. I don't like the smell of tobacco either, but I think I probably dislike the smell of vaping even more. Because it actually smells a bit like that. What do you call it? Shisha, that stuff. And
so many
I don't know. Maybe
shisha places are open. Why the fuck is shisha places like fucking popular with like young kids these days as well?
Yeah, they
probably
are.
For the same fucking reason, actually.
Like I've done it a few times, and it just made me feel sick. I mean, like it, like real queasy. I don't know.
I'm
Maybe
probably gonna buy. I'm probably gonna buy a Cuban cigar, or like try and get my fucking hands on one. Maybe I will settle for Dominican when I get my first fucking proper paycheck from this job.
Okay, that's one thing. I could never stand cigars either. Not that I've done them like a couple of times, and a couple of times I've tried tobacco and I fucking hated it. I don't know. Must be just
I
something.
blame my first boss. This is like the first fucking time he gave me like an envelope full of cash, he also gave me a box of fucking cigars. That dude ran a fucking PMC.
Okay. Well, hold on. So after the October 1 changes, right? So this is where you can pharmacies can sell vapes containing nicotine to anyone over 18 years old, eliminating the need for a medical prescription. The change will occur because vapes containing nicotine will be downgraded from Schedule 4 to Schedule 3 of the poison standard. This is from the ABC, by the way. In many ways, the process of buying a nicotine vape will be similar to that of buying a pack of cigarettes, only from a pharmacy. Vapes containing nicotine will only be available behind the counter, and people will have to present ID to the pharmacist. The packaging will be plain, and the flavors will be limited to mint, methanol, or tobacco. The government claims the concentration of nicotine in e-cigarettes will be
Did you mean menthol, not methanol?
Oh, whoops, did I say Yes, menthol, yes. I'm sorry.
You vape on this shit and you go blind. This flavor is called getting your drink spiked in fucking Indonesia.
That would sell very well in Derby, I think.
Oh yeah.
Maybe we've got a show. Maybe we've got a show title there. I think
methanol vape. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, all right. We'll talk about pill testing now. So this is the practice of where you turn up to a music festival, you can go to a tent, and then you can bring in whatever drugs you've got, and you actually say to the person working there, "Can you tell me like what is in my drug?" How strong it is, how potent it is, how fucked up I'll get from it, etc. Now, the idea behind this is like the reason why like greenies and that push it is because like if you've got, I don't know, ecstasy with rat poison in it or something. I remember that's what they always told us in high school, that drug dealers would cut ecstasy with rat poison. Then you could be told, oh, you've got dangerous drugs here.
They don't cut ecstasy with rat poison. The problem with ecstasy is like when it's not fucking like actually like processed properly, knowing the fucking concentration or strength of it is like damn well fucking impossible. And it doesn't actually take too much over a standard dose of fucking MDMA to kill someone.
Yeah, I mean, I was always skeptical of those kind of stories because I think they were just scare stories, They just thought, we can tell them the scariest shit possible about these drugs. They're less likely to use them. But anyway, that's the idea. Now, I think this is an absolutely ridiculous idea. I think that people will basically utilize it to find out like what they would consider to be the quality of the product that they've bought. Because when it comes to buying drugs, what is it that you're after? You're after something that gets you fucked up. And, just like anything else you buy, you want bang for your buck. You want to know, are you getting good value for the money that you've spent on it? And that is the service that these pill testers provide for drug testers. For drug takers. That's essentially what it is. Now, for a long time, this was exclusively a policy of the Greens and, other fuckwit parties like legalized cannabis or whatever. Well, guess what? It's now Labor Party policy. And as we always see that, just give it like 10 years or so, social policies of the Greens become the social policies of Labor. And then give it another like, say, only 2 years, they become the social policies of the Liberal Party too. So, probably not long until the Liberal Party get on board with this. But anyway, Jacinta Allen, the Victorian Premier, has announced that this will be put to a trial this summer. So, with the upcoming music festivals.
Mm.
Now, apparently, they reckon that this is to appease some people ever since they announced that they would not be constructing the second safe injecting room in Melbourne's CBD. There's already one, but they were supposed to build another. They've since scrapped that idea. So they reckon that, this is sort of like a consolation prize. Where they're like, okay, well, we'll give you pill testing instead. Jacinta Allen also said that she kind of came to this because she has a teenage son and she was worried about his safety going to festivals like this. Look, I'll just say what I've said many times before. You want a good compromise on this, introduce drug bins. That is, you've got bins where you can throw your drugs into before you enter the point where they've got police and sniffer dogs, drug detector dogs. So in other words, you've got an amnesty. You've got an opportunity to get rid of your drugs. The police won't charge you with anything, and then you can just go into the music festival and carry on. They have actually been implemented in Australia before, and they were very successful. In fact, the police said that they found more drugs in the drug bins than what they usually do during seizures. So, why on earth we never held on to that practice is beyond me. Instead, we want to implement pure retardation like this.
Yeah.
This will not discourage drug use in the least. It'll actually encourage it.
I mean, that's the point. That's the point of all of this shit.
Well, considering it was originally a policy of the Greens, then yes, of course.
Do you have to be on drugs to vote Greens, or do you just have to be basically born with a fucking prefrontal orbital lobotomy?
A hell of a lot of people on election day were just wasted, and that's why they vote Greens, I think. All right. Let's move on to the economy and cost of living. So I think I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we do have an inflation rate official now of 4%. Well, that was the rate for May. So it moved from April, where we had it at 3.4%, to 4% in May. Now, the Liberal Party or the Coalition have been saying that this has to be a direct result of the budget and overspending in the budget. To that, I have to say no. Remember, the budget was announced on May 14th. These are the figures for May. So obviously, that is not enough time to see whether or not those measures had an inflationary effect or not. You could argue that other measures, of course, by the Labor Party have contributed to it. I can certainly think of one. It's called immigration. But anyway, this could mean, actually, the Liberal Party predicted that before the next election, this is going to mean a further 2 interest rate rises. We've already had 13 in a row. So obviously having a 14th and a 15th so close to the election would be very bad news for Labor. And look, if that does happen, there's a chance it will, or maybe we'll just get one. I'd say a hung parliament would look very likely, especially if, Knowles, are you talking about this Muslim party that has just come into inception? A future Labor government may find themselves in minority and having to rely on the support of crossbenchers, including those that come from Muslim parties.
Yeah, no, basically, yeah, they're just breaking it down in Joel Davis's chat, and earnestly, it looks like they could really just fuck up the entirety of West Sydney, at least for starters. But yeah, that looks like basically, yeah, Labor is going to have to make alliances, or maybe we'll see. We'll see how this pans out. Watch this space. But yeah, it could really fuck up the electorate of or the electorates of West Sydney.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Or even if they chose the other route, which is like pro-Muslim independence. That could definitely work as well. I mean, just remember the success of Dai Li, who managed to turf out Christina Keneally in West Sydney, I might add.
Well, okay, and
She played to the ethnic vote.
this is also a good thing as well, and I'm going to steal this point from Joel Davis, because basically, you know, you could have like conservative belly aching and being like, oh god, all these fucking brown migrants vote Labour, blah blah blah, but the thing is, you'd always have a dedicated block of ideologically committed Labour voters saying like, actually no, they're choosing the right choice, and you know they're only doing their own interests and supporting our party. Well, congratulations, now you little brown people have their own fucking party. There's no impotence for you to defend them anymore. At least if you're ideologically committed, there's no impotence for you to defend them anymore. And also, this is just shining a light on for basically anyone who's willing to look at it, to say that, hey, look, identity politics win. Identity is king. Race is king.
It is, and we ignore it at our peril. And yeah, only white people are the ones afraid to actually organize collectively on ethnic lines. Muslims have no issue doing it, however. Okay, so you might not have heard of this. This wasn't a huge thing in the news, but last week the government announced it would impose new obligations on supermarket chains to treat their suppliers fairly. We've gone through a few examples of this, like florists who supply Bunnings, for example. Bunnings being an extremely, let's say, monopolistic company. But anyway, these would amount on hefty fines if they do not treat their suppliers fairly. So, okay, no, this wouldn't include Bunnings. It probably should, but it would include Woolworths, Coles, Aldi, and Metcash. So the soon-to-be mandatory code will police unreasonable demands or threats by supermarkets on suppliers, and will apply to companies with an annual revenue of $5 billion. So this was one of the main recommendations put forth by former Labor Minister Craig Emerson. He's the one who led this inquiry into supermarkets in Australia and the cost of living. So this could mean fines of $10 million, or 3 times the financial benefit of the breach for supermarkets that don't comply with the code. Now, there are some concerns here that adopting such a hard line against supermarkets and thus, potentially meting out these fines against them could actually mean higher prices for consumers, because that may be likely to just pass those costs on to the customer. But who knows? We'll see. All right, just a quick story.
They're going to get passed on to the customer. I'm not even joking. That's just like fucking West Farm's fucking like go-to.
What is? Sorry?
Just passing it on to the customer.
Oh, well, that's just normal corporate practice, I think. All right, now look, just quick story here. I mentioned the budget that was back in the 14th of May. So I was unaware of this, but apparently when the budget is passed, everyone in Treasury and those who who work on the budget in some form in Canberra, apparently they have a big piss up. Like, it's a huge thing. Like, they put, so much work into it, and then, finally it's all over, a big weight off their shoulder. So an investigation by the Audit Office found the Treasury spent just over $34,000 on 4 non-compliant budget events. In other words, parties that went on here. So 2 were for departmental staff on budget night in March and October 2022. Okay, so they don't just happen on the night itself. So the money is spent on long-standing budget night tradition colloquially dubbed the budget binge by staff, held to celebrate after a busy period of budget preparation. So there you go. They're pissing up Treasury money, your taxpayer money, on these huge budget binges, as they call them. Okay, on to housing. All right, so there is currently a bill before the Parliament. This is federally. Now, this is known as the Build to Rent program. So this is for multi-story apartment complexes that are there to be to have cheap rent and also to be rented long term. In other words, they're not for sale. It's just rented. Now, this is a proposal, obviously, by the Labor government, and they the way they're trying to roll this out is to get foreign investment companies to build them. How they're doing that? Well, they're cutting company tax for them, thus encouraging more foreign investment and more sardine can accommodation in this country. So what has happened here is you've got this is currently being blocked by the Greens and the Coalition. They're teaming up, albeit for different reasons, as to why they oppose this. Now, talking about the Greens, they actually more or less support what's going on here, except for one thing. They want rent controls. They're saying that with the modelling currently available, they don't believe that those apartments would actually be cheap enough for renters who are struggling. Now, on the other hand, the Coalition, and this is one of the rare times I'm going to defend the Coalition, they're saying, no, we don't like this. And the main reason is because this is not encouraging home ownership. And of course, the Liberal Party at least pays lip service to the idea of living the Australian dream where, every family gets to own its own home, and just saying, no, this is long-term rent where you never stop paying rent. And I absolutely agree with that. I mean, this is an acceleration of Australia into the status of, say, London, Amsterdam, New York, etc., where unless you're in the absolute upper crust of society, you do not own property. Yes. Everyone in New York, no one who lives in New York owns their apartment. They just pay rent to the day they die. That's just the way it is in New York. And by Labor supporting a plan like this, that is the type of society that they're moving us towards. So I actually will say, somewhat anyway, well done to the Libs for supporting this. For opposing this. Now, the assisting housing spokesman is Andrew Bragg, and he said Australians. He said the Liberal Party wanted Australians to be the owners of homes, not foreign fund managers. This is the wrong priority. Labor should be looking to help people into first homes. They should forget about institutions and focus on individuals. Well, completely agree. However, the Greens might get their way here and, they'll simply be guaranteed that these apartments are able to offer cheaper rent, in which case the bill will pass. And, this is part of the problem where, the Greens, talking about economic policy at the moment, their main thing is still bloody, letting in brown people and being gay friendly and legalizing drugs and all that kind of thing. But in the economic sphere, the main thing that they're going after at the moment is renters. Now, this is the problem when you, and I'm not saying I'm against helping renters, of course not. But this is the problem when you only focus on one very particular class of people. And for them, it's low wage earners who basically only rent and, are unlikely to own a house in their lifetime. Well, the best policy for someone who is unlikely to ever own a house, of course, is what? Lifetime rent, cheap rent. So that's what they're focusing on here. And then that, of course, destroys the idea of home ownership. If you simply only focus on that, well, you're destroying, I'm going to sound like a Liberal Party stooge here, but you're destroying the aspirations of the middle class to actually own a house. And that's the issue that the Greens have got at the moment in focusing on this one small demographic. Okay. You can be forgiven for not knowing that the ACT passed a budget. This is the longest running state Labor government ever, I believe. Over 20 years.
It is.
It is, yeah. Okay. Homosexual Chief Minister Andrew Barr, who is married to a man. They've also had several alliances with the Greens over the 20 plus years that they've been in power. But anyway, not going to bore you too much with this. They've just released a budget which has targeted cost of living relief. That includes things like, big surprise, energy rebates, so $300 in energy rebates. About 1/3 of the budget is going into health. And remember, this is also the territory that compulsorily acquired a Catholic hospital. Do you remember that? Basically because it wouldn't perform abortions. So the government just said, okay, we're just going to take you over now. So it will perform abortions. Stamp duty rates and land tax changes. Revenue shortfalls, what a surprise. They're severely in the red. They're in huge amounts of debt in the ACT. And yeah, that's about it. We won't go any further with that. Let's get on to industrial relations. Okay, so Labor at the moment, actually, I just read that I think, let me just quickly check this, but I believe the plans to fast track the demerger of the manufacturing section from the CFMEU have actually passed Parliament. I could be wrong on that, but I think I read that earlier. Anyway, both the Coalition and Labor, have made attempts to break up the CFMEU, Construction, Forestry, Mining, and now Maritime Energy Union. Basically, the bigger the union is, the more powerful they are. So the Coalition broke away as part of their energy sector, which I guess includes miners, things like that, people who work on the mines. And yeah, less membership means less revenue, less power for the CFMEU, which of course is the most militant union that this country has. Yep, it has. So just a few hours ago, the demerger laws passed the Senate. So yeah, the manufacturing section of the CFMEU will now be allowed to break away. Now, that doesn't mean it will. It has to go to a vote. Now, part of the reason why the Labor Party said they support this is because large parts of the manufacturing sector, like textiles, are actually female-dominated. And they said that the CFMEU, with the likes of John Setka, who sends his wife's head slamming into a table, is too blokey, too patriarchal. So, they said that those members would be better off breaking away and perhaps joining the, I think it's the Australian Manufacturing Workers Union, is the other union that represents those in manufacturing. Okay. Usual stuff about people telling the Labor Party to just cut ties altogether with the CFMEU. So former Australian Building and Construction Commissioner John Lloyd has called for that. Look, this is nothing new. The Coalition, business groups have been calling on for Labor for probably decades now to just completely sever ties with the CFMEU. Increasingly, they have. I mean, they expelled John Setka from the Labor Party, but I believe they still do accept donations from the CFMEU.
The proudest have been the members of the CFMEU or just the actions of the members of the CFMEU is when they nearly lynched John Setka. I was
Yeah.
actually really fucking happy that day. Holy shit! If that doesn't tell you what fucking gets me going, I don't know what will.
Yeah, that was because of the mandatory vaccine laws passed by the Andrews government. So,
That
basically, if
was
you wanted to go to work in Victoria, you had to be double vaxxed. John Setka said that the CFMEU was not going to oppose that, even though he said that on principle, like or on a personal level, he did not support mandatory vaccinations. However, he said he wasn't going to,
was it
it wasn't going to be an official position by the union.
was it a quote from Mishima? It was like a left wing violence, right wing violence. I was like, I don't particularly care. I just support the violence. Oh man.
Yeah, but
No, it was cathartic. It was cathartic to see something like that. And I don't particularly care for the structure of this nation.
I mean, I'll say like Setka had some balls, like fronting them. Like he got up right in front of the crowd, like while some of them were trying to physically get at him. Like it was quite a scene. Okay, so Labor is about to overhaul our compensation scheme. So it's about 35 years since something like this has been done. So that makes it easier for workers to sue their employer and receive substantial payouts. So, just things like being injured at work, workers' compensation. Basically, you always were able to sue your employer for it, but these new laws are going to make it easier for you to do so. Which, I don't think I have anything against that. Okay, now, how about this? This is definitely the best news for the unions and their members for the past couple of months, I'd say. So, I actually didn't know this before, but the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Federation, often just referred to as the ANF, they're actually Australia's biggest union. And they've secured pay rises totaling 28.4% over 4 years. And that is, as you can imagine, being the biggest union for thousands of public sector nurses and midwives. But this is just in Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's massive, man. I mean, I remember being surprised at I think it was a 15% pay rise that they got for aged care workers. I mean, that was pretty bloody big. This one, albeit over 4 years, is 28.4%. That is huge. That is a massive, massive win, especially when, other deals with unions and governments have including offers like 3%.
Yeah. What the fuck did the nurses end up getting at the end of the day? Was it 4 to 5%?
In WA, it was something like that. In WA, it was like 4%, I think, or 3.5 is something pitiful.
Oh, dude, it was fucking terrible.
It was pretty bad. So, yeah, over in Victoria, the Socialist People's Republic of Victoria, yeah, your nurse got a nice little pay rise. Okay. All right, so just a quick story on infrastructure in Brisbane. We all know about the 50-cent rides. So this was for both train rides and bus rides in the metropolitan area of Brisbane. Now, the city council in Brisbane is actually saying, did you really put that much thought into this? Obviously, people are going to love the idea of only paying 50 cents, and heaps of them are going to want to take advantage of it and, leave their car at home and take the bus instead. But have you actually considered how overcrowded the buses are going to be, or how many extra buses you're therefore going to need, and the traffic delays that then might cause? So they're saying that, look, basically you now need to put millions of dollars into extra funding for transport and also infrastructure. Otherwise, you're going to be left in a state where you've got all these people who went to catch a bus and then they can't fit on it, and then they're just suddenly left stranded. Good point. Because the government really hasn't said much about how they're going to tackle that issue.
No, actually, I've got a nice solution for them. Infinity more Prajeets to drive the buses, and then a contract with a Chinese company that we're getting screwed on for more buses.
Well,
there we go. That's an Australian government solution to a problem.
Careful what you wish for. That that just might happen.
That's the fucking point. I fucking hate this country.
Okay, just moving on to state politics. So here in WA, our coalition that we barely have here, our coalition leader is Shane Love. You can be forgiven if you didn't know that. He was actually a member of the National Party, not the Liberal Party, because the Nationals were elected with more seats than the Liberal Party in the last election, if you can believe that. Anyway, in a blow to him and his party that has already been reduced to a rump in Parliament, he's got an MP resigning. So this is Louise Kingston. She announced she's resigned her membership of the Nationals and she will sit as an independent. Now, luckily for Shane Love, she sits in the upper house, not in the lower house. So that doesn't affect the numbers in terms of their proportion compared to the Liberal Party. So yeah, that doesn't matter in that terms. Nonetheless, it still is reducing the overall proportion of the party by quite a lot. I don't know how much exactly, but they still don't have that many members in the upper house. So anyway, she's doing this because of what she called relentless bullying and harassment. And she said that this was an agonizing decision made in the hope that it would protect others from what I have endured. Now, she's referring to a pre-selection process that happened earlier in June, which placed her in what was considered to be basically an unwinnable position, which was number 5 on the upper house ticket. She is actually blaming Shane Love for that bullying and the underhanded way in which she was demoted in the upper house ticket. So yeah, for a coalition that is already suffering so much, this was definitely the last thing that they needed. You're just going to have to put all your hopes into Basil Zemplis, leading you to government.
Oh God, I was going to say, like, dude, Jesus fucking Christ! All the meddling back in the day, it's still fucking with them to this day, to this very fucking day. Oh man, honestly, I'm surprised that there's actually the only thing that surprises me about this is the fact that there has been knock-on effects in other states.
Well, I mean, there sort of has. The coalition is still not doing well in the other states.
No. I guess it's not.
I believe our election is next year. So, we've had some other state elections in that time. I don't know if they were directly influenced by what happened here in WA, but, they certainly weren't helped by it. Okay, so our WA politicians are also due to get a pay rise, but only of 4%. Now, that, of course, would and also an additional $1,000 in motor vehicle allowance, so free travel, in other words. Now, 4%, that, of course, would be in line with May's inflation figures. However, that would not be in line in like the inflation figures of the past year. They'd be much, much higher than that. So this means now that the base rate, that is for a backbencher who has no other parliamentary responsibilities, such as being a minister or a parliamentary secretary, whatever, the base rate is $173,393 a year. Now, that's pretty good, you'd think. It's not far off the 200K mark. But believe it or not, this article that I'm reading these figures from was actually about how many MPs or MEPs, no, sorry, MLCs is what I should be calling them in state politics, are resigning because they're not getting enough money. So they profiled someone here. I think she's anonymous because they're just referring to her as Michelle, and she called into Talkback Radio. And she said, a career in politics was just not something I could afford to do with my family. And when I looked at going to Parliament, you can't get a mortgage because your job is so uncertain. You're going to take a drop in salary of at least 25%, and you're on call 24/7 and have no privacy.
I'm not even joking. That's a part of the filter. You can't get a mortgage because your job is so uncertain. For starters, banks are completely, it's true, but like banks are completely and utterly like happy for you to sell your asset and then pay off the rest of the principal/interest. It's actually a filter because they want people who are legal residents, as in lawyers and etc., lawyers, judges, whatever, legal professionals, who basically can reside in the ACT permanently, permanently and stably, to actually fill the roles of government. It's a power selection. It's an elite selection process.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But okay, so she also made the point that she reckons on average or so, you're looking at a 25% pay cut. Now, I can imagine that because most people who go into Parliament were previously professionals.
Yes, yeah, from your primary source of revenue. I guarantee if I dig up on if you actually dig into
Yeah, well, I mean, she's not taking into account things like the fact that you'll get a pension when you leave, and also the perks that you get. I mean, not just the travel allowance, but there's other perks to being a politician. But I would have also thought that once you've been in state parliament, even if it's just for one term, you would have made a lot of connections, including business connections. And that, as well as just simply your experience in the job, would make your resume look pretty good. And therefore, even if you were voted out in the next election, you are very, very likely to then go and land a pretty lucrative corporate job or something post-parliament. You know what I mean? Wouldn't banks, when it comes to mortgages, take that into account as well? You're on mute. Can you hear me? You're on mute.
Yeah, again, sorry. I just had the fucking dog try and enter the room forcefully.
Yeah. Did you hear what I said, though, about the likelihood of getting employment after Parliament?
Isn't it pretty much guaranteed?
Well, yeah, but this is what I mean. You're gaining experience as a politician, and aren't you gaining really good connections as well in the corporate sector and in government and everything, which basically guarantees you some kind of lucrative job once you leave Parliament, even if you're voted out.
Yes, I mean, didn't Scott Morrison he didn't get it, granted, but didn't he was just oh yeah, can I just fucking hey, rugby union, can I fucking just get a job, get a cushy dumb job over there?
Yeah, I mean, they tend to go to Crown Casino or something, rugby, but yeah, and
institutions and organizations that might run into problems with the government.
Yeah. Now, look, I don't know. Maybe it's different for a backbencher in WA. Maybe they don't make those same kind of connections or whatever. I don't know. But bloody hell, I mean, 173 grand a year, I mean, that is still pretty bloody good. Okay. Couple of quick stories. Labor in New South Wales, that is, has just appointed a new state president. And I just found this interesting because this is a woman who is 81 years old and a former judge. And, you just kind of think, okay, these kind of appointments, yeah, they tend to appoint women nowadays to show how diverse and everything they are. But 81 years old? Wow. I
Yeah.
mean, that's how old Joe Biden is, who can't string a sentence together anymore.
I was going to say, did they carbon date this one?
Yeah. I would have thought they would have gone with someone way younger. Okay, on the Teals, again, quick story. John Howard has come out to back coalition members who are either running again or new candidates who are going after the Teal seats that were taken from the coalition in the last election. Now, he has said that he is predicting that the Teal vote will collapse. And he says,
yeah.
Well, look, I've made this prediction as well, and I've made it basically based on power prices. People are going to be very angry about the how much their power prices have gone up, and they're going to associate the Teals as part of that problem, because what else are the Teals except like liberals with climate change, green energy bullshit put on top?
Yeah, pretty much not. It's keep your daddy's money and spend them on poppers at the gay nightclub.
So, I mean, I think there's good. I agree with Howard there. I think there is going to be that backlash against him. Okay. All right. So, on the Greens, you might have heard of the conservative activist group called Advance. They used to be called Advance Australia. They were formed as like a direct response to Get Up, which, of course, is like basically the Labor Party and sort of the Greens aligned think tank / activist group. And, they put a lot of money into campaigns, but, a lot of advertising mainly. Like usually they won't back a particular candidate. They'll just put out, particular advertising and messages and stuff. And Friendly Geordies, by the way, was on their payroll. So,
yes.
And that was basically the point where he admitted to, being a Labor Party stooge when that was revealed. But anyway,
everyone fucking literally like fucking someone like saw him like literally like fucking like detailing out some contract or some shit like that, and then it was like, oh, I'm not a stooge, and then fucking finally gets realized like, oh, I was a stooge the entire time. Surprising considering his latest fucking video, by the way.
I know he's kind of going against the Israel lobby, which was surprising. I mean, I don't think I watched all of it, but yeah, I pretty much agreed with what he said in that. Anyway, about Advance. Well, I'll give you some figures here because I actually didn't know this before, but they have around 306,000 supporters and around 32,000 donors. Now, they were a major contributor to the Vote No campaign for the Voice referendum. In fact, I think they may have been the biggest because, for an activist conservative group, I think they probably got the deepest pockets. Anyway, what do they plan to do in the next election? Well, they're actually going to be going after the Greens. So this is going to be a $5 million campaign on phase one of a national election campaign titled Greens Truth. So they say they want to inflict significant damage to the left-wing party's brand. So part of that is they want to bring to public attention and really emphasize so that it sticks in people's heads the more radical policies that they have. Now, I didn't read into this, but I assume they're talking about things like free sex changes for Medicare, reforming family law so that you can make it easier to put children on puberty blockers and hormone replacement therapy. Yes, these are Greens policies. So I would suspect that they're not really going to focus on the climate change stuff because, we're all aware of that. And I mean, they're called the Greens. We all know about their environmental stance. But yeah, the more sort of fringe elements of the social policy when it comes to, you know, homosexual stuff, drug policy, how they essentially support the legalization of drugs and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, I may not be the biggest fan of Advance, but that sounds like a pretty good plan to me. Especially since you know, the Greens have been showing lately at both the state and federal level that they're able to take lower house seats as well. They used to pretty much exclusively be a party of the Senate and the upper house. You know, that's changing now, as we saw in the last federal election. So, yeah, definitely need to take up the fight to them. Okay, quick story. This was kind of silly, but this is on LGBT news. So the Greens MP, speak of one of the ones who took a lower house seat in the federal parliament, Stephen Bates, he's asked Albanese to apologise.
So he's a political bottom?
Yes, you could say that. He's asked
there's another title.
Yeah, we usually struggle for them. We actually got a few tonight. So this was after Albo joked about Peter Dutton's use of pronouns in Question Time. Now, I got to admit, when I read this, I'm not even sure if I'm understanding any of this properly, but the Liberal MP, Angie Bell, raised a point of order saying that Albanese was referring to Dutton repeatedly as he. Now, remember, in Parliament, you're supposed to address members by their titles. So in that case, you know... Yeah, you're supposed to say like the leader of the opposition or the member for whatever. You know, you're supposed to do that instead of using their name or their pronouns. So in response to this point of order, Albanese joked, anything is possible on that side. I didn't know he was a they, but anything is possible. So I guess he was referring to the gender neutral pronoun of they there, but I don't really get the joke. So anyway, Stephen Bates, who is the parliamentary bottom, he's the LGBT spokesman for the Greens, and he posted on social media on X, "No, Albo, we aren't going to make jokes at the expense of the LGBTIQA plus community. The Prime Minister should be better than this and should apologise."
I still love that acronym, depending on like, you can stick with the basic one and then you're taken seriously. You can add a couple more extra letters to it and you're taken seriously. But at some point, if you add enough letters, people know you're taking the piss out of them.
Oh, yeah. They should have M in there.
Symbols and numbers.
I think sometimes they do put M in there for maps, don't they? Minor attracted person.
Sometimes do, yeah. I don't want to refer to them. They're fucking just P for fucking pedophile.
Yeah.
And in fact, you can replace all those letters with D for demon.
Yeah, so look, I didn't even really get that joke, but I don't think, Albo was making fun of trannies or whatever. No. Anyway, let's move on to disability. So there is sort of an impending NDIS amendment bill that looks like it's going to be very soon put to the lower house. Unlike religious freedom and the emergency immigration laws, these are amendments that Labor does actually want to desperately get through because of just how much the NDIS is costing. I believe it's actually about twice as much as Medicare. And I mean, Medicare was a program that basically applies to all Australians. The NDIS is only supposed to apply to disabled people. But anyway, Bill Shorten, who of course is the disability minister, he named the following items that continue to be purchased on the NDIS. Those include crystal therapy, washing machines, bird seeds, wet and wild tickets, and even cuddle therapy. Yes. Oh, man, look, remember, prostitutes. You can get prostitutes on the NDIS as well, so this doesn't surprise me at all. So,
Dude, I need that prostitute money because I'm slobbering like a fucking retard.
So Bill Shorten is warning that if they don't get this legislation in soon, well, we're just going to increasingly be paying for stuff like this, and more silly items are going to be added. And he's right. He's definitely right about that. Now, the Greens are not happy about this because they say that they've looked at the draft legislation and they say it's too punitive. They pointed out that it's doing things like asking people who are already on the scheme to provide further evidence. So, you've already actually provided the evidence, and then, they say, well, you need to provide more. Things like that. Well, look, I don't know how else they're going to get it out under control. It's also been pointed out that, I can't remember the figure exactly, but it's something like 10% is estimated to be siphoned off by organized crime. So obviously, the scheme is exploitable enough. It's easy enough to kind of get in and take advantage of it, that organised crime in Australia sees those opportunities and is taking advantage of it. So, yeah, we need to get some amendments through pretty soon.
I mean, they're just going to fucking drop the autistic people, aren't they?
Well, look, yeah. I think it's something like 1/3 of NDIS recipients are autistic or are said to be autistic. Now, that may not necessarily be the primary reason why they're on it, but it's at least part of it. So, yeah, definitely. And also remember, rates of autism in like every country continue to go up. They always do. And, I won't go on my usual rant, but, that's because I think we just too easily dismiss people as autistic for weird behavior nowadays, just for being a bit awkward or something. Like, oh, he must be on the spectrum, that kind of shit. But yeah, anyway, some of the changes that are being proposed are moves to define what constitutes exactly NDIS support, to expand the powers of the NDIS Quality and Safeguards Commissioner, implement comprehensive needs assessments, and move away from admissions to the scheme solely based on diagnosis. Right, so that last one, that's an interesting one, because remember, like, for example, if you're under 18, you can get a diagnosis of ADHD from your GP in like one session. So the NDIS, yeah, that's true. And then prescribed, whatever stimulant drugs you want to get your kid on. So the NDIS recognizes that. They recognize that diagnosis can far too easily be handed down by, a GP or a psychologist or whatever. And they're basically saying, okay, you need to show a bit more than that. You show your diagnosis as part of your evidence, but you've got to show something else. And, it's stuff like this that the Greens don't like. They say that that's going to push too many people who do have a genuine disability out of the scheme, and they're going to be left unsupported. So
maybe I just like fucking, like if you got a kid, just like feed him a whole bunch of sugar and take him to a GP appointment.
Okay, now, last story on the NDIS. So officials working for the scheme have apparently failed to disclose years of gifts and hospitality received from US software companies. Now, the NDIS, as you can imagine, makes use of a lot of software to run their systems. And the one in question here is a technology platform called Pace. Now, they've won contracts, as you can imagine, with the NDIS. And look, basically what this is about is they've been wining and dining the people who make those decisions, who make those contracts. And they've engaged in a form of bribery, essentially. And while that's been going on, the NDIS has not been disclosing it. So that you could basically call corruption at the highest levels of the NDIS. Another reason why it needs reform. Alrighty. Well, oh, geez. Sorry, another long one for us tonight. But just the remaining stories are quick, I promise. So Brittany Higgins. The plan to a wide-ranging probe to overhaul the nation's sexual assault laws will deal with every issue that arose after Brittany Higgins accused Bruce Lehrmann of raping her in Parliament. So this is according to Australian Law Reform Commission President, Mordecai Bromberg.
Oh, God.
Now, look, this is a probe to do with basically this is how sexual assault victims are treated in court, and how they're subject to cross-examination, and that brings with it all the issues of reliving the experience and the trauma and everything in the courtroom. So I sympathize with that. Obviously, the genuine victims, obviously that must be an awful thing to go through. But still, you have to have a fair trial. And, if you've got someone who's innocent there and everything is skewed in favor of the so-called victim, well, you're bound to end up with a few guilty verdicts against innocent men, which, is unfair. Anyway, speaking at the University of Melbourne, Justice Bromberg said that although the inquiry would not make specific reference to Mr. Lehrmann's aborted rape trial and subsequent defamation loss, it would deal with every issue that really arises out of that particular example. Okay, so what he's saying is this is basically the supreme case to look at, even though it didn't result in a verdict because it was declared a mistrial. And all those issues that were brought up, like I said, reliving the trauma and all that kind of thing. Now, I got to remind people that the ACT rushed through laws that made it so that in the event, a victim's testimony or the accuser's testimony could actually be video recorded and then submitted as their testimony and therefore not be subject to cross-examination. That was passed in the ACT. That's law now in the ACT.
Jesus.
So if that is the case that they're looking to as the absolute pinnacle for as an example, then what are the recommendations of this inquiry going to be? Quite possibly something similar. Now, obviously, the ACT is pos central. They're a bit different. They're even worse than Victoria. But still, this kind of just shows how dangerous this whole trial has been.
You need to describe the ACT like how an Italian person describes to their grandma that their cousin is gay. Because the ACT is gay.
It very much is. All right. We have a new Governor General. She was recently sworn in, and while I'd say quite a few Aussies saw this on the news, give it about a month and they'll forget her name. We never, ever remember the name of our Governor General.
Because no one gives a shit.
No. Ask the Jewish community, and they all know who Isaac Isaacs is, though. But anyway, her name is Sam Mostyn. And, not only has she entered this new role, but this new role of Governor General has received a pay rise of almost $200,000. Yes, you heard that right. Now, that is a 43% pay rise. So 43% more than our former Army General David Hurley received. Now, the reason for this is because of changes to the pension. She will not receive the same military pension as her predecessor did, which has resulted in her pay being adjusted accordingly. Now, interestingly, she still does get a pension. I don't know what the figures are, but I assume it's pretty generous. And so this actually brings her salary, her yearly pay, to $709,000. $709,017. Now that is actually that is $100,000, $100,000 more than the Prime Minister gets. Okay. Now, granted, the Prime Minister gets a more generous pension and all that shit, but what the fuck, man? 700 grand to the Governor General, who only has a ceremonial role, not a political governmental role.
Dude, what the fuck?
I know. That is absolutely whopping. Okay.
I'm actually in pain because of that. Jesus.
All right, next story. Tom Dutton. He is the 18-year-old son of our opposition leader, Peter Dutton. Now, a few days ago, a photo of him appeared, I believe, on social media with the caption saying, "Birthday day treat. Hello, how you going?" He was actually, in that photo, holding up a little sealable plastic bag with a white powder inside of it. The photo was soon deleted, but as you can imagine, several people took screenshots of it while it was up. So it's still freely available. Now, apparently, Peter Dutton's office was contacted about this, and they basically said that this is a private family matter and they're not commenting on it. As far as I know, Peter Dutton has not made any public comment on it. But there you go. Look, he might have also just been showing off. It might have been, not drugs, and he was just doing, a bit of edge posting or something.
It's just a shit post, guys. It's just a shit post, I promise. I promise it's just a shit post, guys.
Could well have been. And, oh God, I didn't have I should have put a title in my prep here, but there's an excess of rat tests, rapid antigen tests in Australia. There's no way this surprises me considering the amount of stalls. I remember mid last year or something, not even a year ago, I remember in the city seeing stalls of people handing out free rat tests. Anyway, here in WA, we apparently struggled initially to get enough of these rat tests. Now we have apparently gone on to order millions too many. And there are around 19 million unusable tests that are costing $75,000 a month to store. On top of that, when it comes to, say, destroying them, that figure is in the millions. And, this really reminds me, I remember this probably be about 3 years ago now, the amount of masks that were in circulation were actually causing enormous environmental issues, like filling up landfills and ending up in the ocean and just, general rubbish scattered everywhere.
Slowly turning the rest of the world into what China is.
Yeah. So there you go. There's another one of those externalities of the COVID panic. Okay, last story we have here. It looks like reform of Section 93Z. This is part of the New South Wales Criminal Code, or I'm not sure if you call it the Criminal Code there, but anyway, your criminal law there. 93Z pertains to hate speech laws. Now, ever since October 9, 2 days after October 7, where you had the protests at the Sydney Opera House, this, of course, was when the Jewish community went absolutely nuts and wanted, that crowd, who were basically all Arab Muslim protesters, apparently yelling out things
their balls exploded.
Yeah, well, remember, like initially they were accused of yelling out, "Gas the Jews." It turned out later they were saying, "Where's the Jews?" Um, Fair to say, though, I remember I did see footage of this. They were also saying "fuck the Jews." So yes, definitely, you could say this was anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish.
I would never.
Yeah, but you might remember at the time, Jewish groups were just going mad, telling the police, arrest them, prosecute them under 93Z. And the police basically said, we don't think we can. They were receiving legal advice saying that the wording of 93Z meant that they, for the type of slogans and chants that they were yelling out of those marches, they couldn't arrest them and prosecute them. So, what was the next step? A massive concerted effort by the Jewish lobby to reform Section 93Z. Well, that is right around the corner. State Chief Justice Tom Bathurst released a draft options list to strengthen the legislation. And it's won the support of both political and religious leaders, most importantly, the Jewish community. Now, the Australian, when they reported this, they were quick to also point out that the Muslim community is in favour of this as well. So, of course, you can expect things to do with, Islamophobia, what would be considered Islamophobic speech. But make no mistake, the reason why we have gotten these reforms so quickly is because of the Jewish lobby and what they saw on October 9th and afterwards. But yeah, there you go. You're about to get even more draconian hate speech laws in New South Wales. Look forward to that. All right, guys, that's it from us. Please enjoy your methanol vapes, and in the meantime, we'll see you in about a week. See you then.
Please do not politically bottom.